And we're live. Hello, YouTube. Hope you're doing well today.
Oh, fans.
Video streaming service you.
Did your fans immediately go up, Paul?
They did. Our fans have. No, I don't understand. I've done everything I could. Anyway, so.
Did a tweet go out?
Yes. There was a tweet. So I guess I will just continue to sound like I'm underwater as I filter out these fans. Put this very close to my face.
Just hide behind the...
That's perfect. We should all get our masks on.
This isn't a pop filter, it's a jack filter. There's all of me.
Well, if you think of where we all are, I think we definitely even redefine distancing. So I think we're okay.
People naturally keep away from me.
Okay. I opened up all. That's actually maybe that's why all the fans are running. I opened up like 700 tabs.
That might do it.
Maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I'll open them up as we go. Goodbye.
I like this.
Open all the tabs. Open all the tabs, Hal.
All right. Are we ready? I think we are. Am I recording?
I'm recording audio.
Oh, good point. Is everybody recording? Yep, I got waveforms.
I'm recording.
Salieri has my back.
Awesome.
We can't see your window, Carrington. That's how I know how the evening's progressing. I can usually see the...
That's right. When it's time to stop. Yeah.
We'll do a check-in every once in a while. Let's rotate
just do a little quick check-in every now and then. Great.
It's May 17th.
I swear I saw something in the video. I'm like, what is that?
Still May 17th. All right, I'm going to start. Is that all right?
Sure.
I
dare you.
It's May 17th. It's May 17th, 2020, and welcome to episode 214 of the Retro Computing Roundtable. The RCR is a podcast about retro computer news, nostalgia, collecting, and computers on TV. That's what we will talk about today. But first, I am Paul Hagstrom in Boston, and I am joined by 4 other retro computing enthusiasts. First, on my little clockwise screen is Earl Evans in Portland. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody. Doing well today.
Excellent.
How about you?
Oh, fine. Very busy for some reason, but next up is Jack Nutting in Stockholm. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing well. Calm weekend here. It's always nice.
Very nice.
And which is always the case these days. I feel like I haven't had an exciting weekend since I don't know when.
That's right. It's sometimes a little hard to tell where the boundary between weekday and weekend is.
Right. Yeah. It's all a blur.
Yep. Did I say where you were? Stockholm. I did. Okay.
Yes.
And from Northern Virginia, Blake Patterson. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm looking forward to a hopefully not too distant haircut. Other than that, I'm doing what it is I can here do at home. So and a lot of that is to do with retro. So good to be here.
Excellent. And lastly, Carrington Vanston from Toronto. How are you?
Not looking forward to a haircut.
That's right.
I'm doing swell. As swell as can be. Maximum swell.
Super.
All right. So the host's topic today is computers in TV and movies. So, which is kind of a broad topic, but it sort of came up. So it came up for a particular reason, which was a link that we didn't talk about last time. There's a YouTube video called "Rebuilding James Bond's Apple IIc: A Software Forgery" by Max Piantoni, and Blake had put this in. It had sent this to us as a link, and then we didn't use it.
I'll show you, Blake.
I don't know, Blake, if you wanted to talk through it since you since you had prepared it, but otherwise.
Sure, I could do that. I happen to see this. It's a video where in View to a Kill, which I think was 1984 or 1985. 1985, one of the James Bond films, one of my favorites actually, but it's sort of cheesy in retrospect. Anyway, there's a scene where an Apple IIc is on a coffee table by the bed of the leading lady, and she is a seismologist, and it's tapped into the earthquake center, and so they log in with the 2C, and it runs this program, and it shows some waveform analysis, and then she hits a couple of keys, and then it shows a map of the Bay Area with a pinpointing the location of the small tremor. And so this individual, I don't recall exactly, having been a few weeks, how I stumbled upon it, but this fellow Max. Let's see. What's Max's last name?
It is Piantoni.
Piantoni. He set out to, and he made a video, and he set out to recreate this program. He made an excellent video talking through what it is he did, what he noticed about the original on screen. There's some font considerations, and there are some speed considerations as far as, well, Apple's, he wanted to do this in AppleSoft Basic. It looks like it definitely was done in AppleSoft Basic in the movie. He was trying to figure out how they did it, and he came up with a way to do it using some external tools. Actually, he utilized Beagle Brothers, or Beagle Bros, Apple Mechanic shape table system to make the animations work. And it's pretty fascinating to watch. He shows it running on his system. It's basically an exact clone, and he also put it on GitHub and release the source code, release the AppleSoft Basic source code, so you could run it. And I actually ran it on my 2E, and it runs quite nicely. It's interesting to see, but it's very impressive. And he actually sent me an update over Twitter. He has enhanced the program beyond the movie version, such that if you strike a key in the second screen, it'll actually take you back to the first. So it's more powerful than the movie original at this point. He updated it within the past week, and that's presumably on GitHub. I haven't tried that version out, but yeah, it's very impressive. And it definitely was a scene that I remembered very well, which is why I reacted to it and put the little blog post together. That was my favorite part of the movie. But anyway, and that's how our topic came to be.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty broad topic, and I think we're all sort of talking about different things. But so one possible angle on this is just like the View to a Kill, where there were sort of contemporary computers, from our past, but contemporary to the movie, that were being used. And those are, it's kind of fun to see those, because of course they were rare and new and mysterious at the time.
Sure.
And then
if someone had the ability to push, just to give the YouTube stream people a quick look, if you were to push it over to my share screen, is this going to work for us? Then so there it is, running on the on my 2E with the two screens. But you can see this is an animation, the little bullseye that goes in towards the Bay Area, and the previous screen had been the waveform. So it runs just great on. You can just download it, put it on a disk, and boot it up. It's a lot of fun. I think I left it running for the entirety of several work days here during the shutdown to my left, and that made working at home a little more special. So anyway, so I'll stop sharing that one.
Very cool.
Cool.
But yeah, so there's sort of a couple different takes on it. Old computers that were in old things, so new computers at those times. But there's also been a fair number of modern shows that have either been set in the past or just have incidental old computers around. So we can sort of just go around. There's so much to talk about here. I don't know. I have no idea where this is going to go. Just seemed like it would be interesting to talk about. So maybe Earl, we can start with you. What else did you?
I'll be quick. One of these is an old computer, and it's supposed to be old in context. This was in the movie Terminator. I think it was Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. there's a scene in the movie where they wind up in a room with a bunch of old computers and technology. And as you pan across this, this basically full room of old computers, I think they were like real tape drives and all that, you see a Commodore PET. And that's the one, of course, that, struck me when I was looking at this. I was like, hey, check it out, a Commodore. So that was fun. But it's supposed to be old in that particular setting. So on the other hand, there was another where it's kind of funny because it's old. There's this spoof parody movie called Star Wreck in the Perkinning. Have any of you guys ever seen that movie? If you have any Star Trek in you at all, you should go see that movie. I think you can find it on YouTube because it's stinking hilarious. You'll need captions because it's Finnish. And by that, I don't mean it's done. I mean, it's from Finland. And
I've never heard of it.
Hilarious. But in
The poster for it is amazing.
Yeah. And in one scene in this movie, there's a couple of Commodore 64s that are running a nuclear power plant, which I just, remembering the QA on Commodores, I would not want them anywhere near a nuclear power plant. But, and this is a Commodore guy talking. So anyway, those were my two that came to the top of my head when I thought about this topic. But then, as I thought about it a little further, there's a couple I didn't put in the show notes. There was an old show called UFO. Do you guys remember that one? It only ran for one season.
I think I might.
Anyway, it was sci-fi. It has kind of, even to this day, kind of a cult following. But
Like how old are we talking? Like what decade?
I think it was 70s because
Yeah, I don't know it.
in the movie, or I'm sorry, not the movie, in the show, 1980 is still in the future. And they portray 1980 as, wow, this is going to be so amazing in
They were right.
1980. We'll have, electric cars with doors that fling up like a DeLorean and all this kind of, and that stuff didn't happen, but that's okay. I don't have my hoverboard either. But a lot of the technology that they showed that was supposedly this way cool, amazing, futuristic stuff in 1980 would actually be starting to be kind of passé by the time we got to 1980, like reel-to-reel tape storage, teletypes, all kinds of teletypes in this show. And I also remembered a teletype as being one of the primary interfaces for this movie called Colossus, the Forbin Project. We've talked about it before on the show, where this big computer in charge of the nuclear weapons takes over the world, yada, yada. But yeah.
Don't yada yada Colossus Forbin Project. It's amazing.
It is. It really is. And actually, I found out by doing some research on this for the show that they've come out with it in Blu-ray. And they had a couple of minutes of the sample footage on YouTube. It is gorgeous. So if you are a fan of that movie, which I am, I think you should look into the Blu-ray.
That is awesome. I didn't know it was on Blu-ray, and I will absolutely snag it.
I wonder if we should swap out the host's gift idea. We'll see.
So those are mine.
Yeah, that's
I don't.
cool.
I don't mean the Blu-ray, although I am going to buy the Blu-ray.
Yep.
That's a tongue
Yeah,
twister.
100%. Colossus is amazing. Have any of you guys read the book series? It was Colossus is like the first book of 3.
I read the first of the trilogy.
Yeah.
I haven't read the rest. I want to see.
I'm
if
in
I
the same
can-
position. I've got all 3 in like used old chewed up paperbacks, which is really a great way to read those books. Third one is called Colossus and the Crab. So I have no idea how this story gets to that place, but I'm interested in finding out.
I mean, even the movie, I don't want to spoil it, but it ends in a sort of a cliffhanger. I will say that. So it would be interesting to know how the story progressed from there.
The funny thing is the movie is sexist, of course, because of it really just when it was 1970 film shock and sexist. The book is so much more, like so much more. So that's the thing to brace yourself for if you read the book. But it's still, I still recommend it. Like it's a fun book.
Little
And a great
temporal
movie.
culture shock.
Oh, big time, big time. Yeah, but a great movie. I love it.
Warning taken.
Yep.
It is kind of funny, this, the idea of sort of like panning over old tech, including a Commodore PET or whatever, in an old movie. This movie is an old movie, right? Terminator: Rise of the Machines. I don't think I've seen it.
Well, it's old, but it's not supposed to be old enough where people would still be using a Commodore PET or
Yeah.
reel-to-reel tape decks or that kind of thing. So they are supposed to be retro, old technology in context. I don't want to talk any more about that because I would give away one of the interesting things about the film, and I don't want spoilers.
Okay, fair enough. But I guess I was just thinking that, as we get further and further away from when that was made, it starts looking like just really very fine degrees of old. It's like old tech looking at what seems like the day before and mocking it.
Right. Old by a few years, whereas now we're looking at it old by a few decades.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. Blake, you've put a mighty list here.
It's a mighty list.
I'd quickly move through. I mean, there's some that it's hard. I mean, you almost don't need to mention, like obviously war games. Everyone knows about war games, and
Never heard of it.
What was that? Yeah, I've never heard of it. Yeah.
Would you recommend it?
With the famous MSI 8080, and that was the movie that really kind of got me started. But some of the more obscure, I just talk about just a number of bizarre things that I remember off the top of my head. Some are pretty bizarre, and I mentioned the type of system. There's one, I'm sure everyone saw this. It's the Fantastic World of D.C. Collins from 1983. It was a TV movie starring Gary Coleman as a sort of a daydreaming sort of spy detective hero type thing. It's very bizarre, but I remember at the time it came as one of these. We didn't have a lot of television movies back in the early 80s, and so you watched what came on. And at the time, I had a TI 99.4A, and DC Collins also had a TI 99.4A, and it was another movie where a spy had embedded, there was a great deal of blueprints that were recorded onto an Atari cartridge, an Atari 2600 cartridge. I've seen several movies where the Atari cartridge is used as a storage device for, world domination plans. I guess it was the capacity, that sort of thing. But anyway, so that was there. And that means, of course, there was an Atari 2600 in it as well. But and most everyone here remembers WizKids, the TV series.
Yep.
I'm guessing, yeah. Yep. And where the main guy Ralph, he was the big computer fella, and they would fight crime, and they had a police officer friend. I don't know what kind of computer it was. I look back, I can't determine. I think it was more like he had terminals, and I bet there was an S100 bus machine on a shelf somewhere, but he didn't have any. I couldn't find any brand named items. It certainly wasn't anything like a Commodore 64.
Yeah, he had that room full of stuff.
He had a room full of stuff. Yeah. He had like a robot arm, and something would project a laser on the wall. I mean, it was a little gratuitous, I think. But at any rate, you see that speaks more. He probably had an S100 box filled. Every card, had some other crazy thing in there. I think it would even make him coffee or eggs or something. I don't know. He named his computer Ralph. But
was this? So there was a show that at Kansas Fest was like the first episode was read out.
Yeah,
I think it was last year.
WizKids.
Was it WizKids?
Okay. Oh, it must have been. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And the series is available, but not. It's like rips from old VHS copies or whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch, but it's still worth watching.
Okay.
Yeah. And I forgot to put it in the show notes, and I don't know if it's worth putting it in there, but I found the entirety of the Fantastic World of DC Collins on YouTube, but I can't really recommend. I don't know if I recommend sitting down and watching it. At any rate, just to get through a few more, a big movie for 84 was 2010, and that's I've seen in comments and in references on Twitter and other media regarding Max's View to a Kill piece. Like half the people that responded mentioned this scene at the end of 2010.
Yep. The very portable 2C.
Yeah, Roy Scheider's on a beach with an Apple IIc with that LCD that Apple put out that I'm sure like 7 people purchased. There's no cord going in the back of the Apple, but he's typing on it about a letter to his son in the future, and there's 2 suns in the sky. Yeah, so that was that really got me as well. Again, I had a 2C at that time, so I got really excited about that.
I think if you had one of those flat panel displays. You would
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, talking over here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll say my thing quickly. Yeah, I was just going to say, if you had one of those flat panel displays, you might well not know the difference between having it on and not having it on.
I was thinking the same thing, especially out in the sun like that.
They are
It's
really
possible.
bad.
It occurred to me that the reason that he was using it in full sun on the beach was that he wanted to be able to read it because, of course, there's no backlight. I think you could only read it in
I guess, yeah.
sunlight.
Maybe.
It is impossible to see, though. It's so bad. It looks neat, but it's unusable.
I think in the extended cut after that, he speaks maledictions under his breath about having to drag that darn thing out to the beach again just to write a letter. So, yeah, but
because in the future there are no pencils.
That's right. What were you going to say, Jack?
Oh, I remember seeing the movie, but it was a long time ago. So you're saying there's a scene at the end where he's in the year 2010 is sitting on the beach with an Apple IIc.
Because it looks so futuristic. It's just him in his shorts on the sand.
That's
Okay.
right.
It's like a beefcake shot with him. It's
it
crazy.
is set in the year 2010, and he has the
Makes
Apple
total sense.
IIc. And I mean, it seemed fine to me. I couldn't see.
Well, the full name of the movie is 2010, the year we make contact at 300 baud. So
That's right. That's right. So just to move through a few more, one of my favorite movies. It's very cheesy and it doesn't really hold up, I guess. But has anyone else seen Electric Dreams?
Yep, love triangle between a man, a woman, and a computer.
Exactly. It's a really good movie with a really good soundtrack. ELO, I think, Boy George, and some other. It was pretty good soundtrack. But yeah, he buys a pine cone computer, brings it home, dials up into his office mainframe. Apparently, there's too much data. Well, he specifies that it's an amount of data to receive, and he typed the word unlimited, and that's where the mistake happened because it overloaded the computer. It started to smoke physically, and so he used champagne to put out the smoke, and that's when the fun begins. I don't want to spoil too much. What were you saying, Earl?
I was saying, yeah, like you do.
Like you do, yeah.
I usually like
Yeah.
Well,
reefer capacitors. Champagne's the best bet.
70s, 80s, there's a lot of movies where some form of electricity and water spike or whatever gives the whole Frankenstein thing, and the computer's alive. The computer in that case, well, Virginia Madsen's the lady, but the computer's voiced by Bud Cort, the guy from Harold and Maude and Brewster McCloud and stuff, and so many things.
Hair, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. Bud Cort. It's worth watching. I think
totally worth watching.
Hold up, but it's worth watching. But yeah, and it was interesting. I think there actually was a clone, like an Apple's clone computer maker called Pinecone or something. But they used that name. I think I saw an ad for a Pinecone, but it wasn't this computer at all. It was just they created a brand because it was Apple, pear, apricot, all that. Anyway, I'll just move through quickly. Another movie that I was quite fond of back at the time was Cloak and Dagger, which
another cartridge saves the world kind of thing.
Yes, the cartridge was there's a chip this chip doesn't belong here, and it's got a wire that attaches it. It's actually William Forsythe. It's his first role, I think, and he's running a video game shop, and in the back room there's an Atari 800, and he's working on that, and he's got he analyzes this cartridge, and it's interesting that they refer to through every scene of the movie, they refer to this cartridge as a tape. It's an Atari tape. They said, "Here, you've got the game tape. Give me that tape." And he said, "I'm going to open this tape up, and I see a chip is out of place." It was always a tape, so I don't know if it's interesting to contemplate.
It's where fellow podcaster Jack Flack gets his name from. Yeah.
Yes, Jack Flack with Dabney Coleman. Yeah. I think also a good movie. I think worth watching if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, definitely.
See, Carrington's with me.
I remember at the time.
Oh, I'm totally with you.
I was disappointed that the game itself, because they're playing the game. There's a game, Cloak and Dagger, in the movie, which was also an arcade game, but it never actually came out for the Atari 8-bits as a release.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Prototype. Oh. I saw somebody playing a prototype of it on YouTube. It was going to be released, but never was. It was never finished.
Interesting.
So
that sounds kind of like the last Starfighter story, but that's another story. So and then of course, I got a few more. I'll move down quickly. Weird Science. Everybody knows about Weird Science. They use a computer to create a woman, and as one does. It's a Memotech MTX 512, which is a very sexy looking black computer. I remember recognizing it at the time, and I don't think it the movie oversells its capabilities. I'll say. I think they probably sold a few. That's the only batch of sales they probably had. But it was an oddly expensive computer with weird MIDI capabilities. And so a few others. Knight Rider TV series. I remember, Knight Rider Kit, the car. That's a computer. But at the time, I had a TI 99 4A, and I remember I thought that I heard about the TI Professional, and that's a PC clone. But I got it in my head that it was a Super TI 99, and so I wanted one. And then I wrote away for the booklet, but it was thousands of dollars. Still, I was all into TI, and in the back of their truck, where they would drive Kit up into the back of the truck, there was a TI Professional that they would help analyze things. But you can't actually drive up into the back of the truck. What they would do is they would lower the car out and let it release, and then they would reverse the film, because if you accelerate a car up a ramp, it'll fly into the back of the truck.
Yeah. I've always figured like if you hit that ramp and you'd be going so fast and boom.
No, they reversed it. They reversed the film. So a little interesting tidbit about that.
Interesting.
And then I'll just sweep through the last few. Kindergarten Cop. It is not a Tuma, Arnold Schwarzenegger. 1990. There's an Apple II GS in the classroom by the window. City Slickers with Billy Crystal in his office where he sells on-air advertising space. There is an Amiga 3000, which was, I think, the go-to machine of most advertising salesmen at the time.
Certainly.
Not actually. But and then the last one is Wayne's World. I remember seeing the Amiga 2000 with Video Toaster, and I think Garth has a Video Toaster T-shirt in Wayne's World too.
Wow!
But yeah, it was a scene. It was the scene, one of the first scenes that we saw out of well, I can't think of his name now. Well, it's not important, but anyway, yeah. So that's my list, and yeah, there you go.
Well, Blake, if you're up for it, we actually have a request in the comments to see your T-shirt.
Oh, my T-shirt? I didn't. Okay, let's see.
Speaking of T-shirts.
Yes, the one I'm wearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
it is,
On Twitter. On Twitter. Nice.
Yeah, I didn't want to. Yeah. There you go. So.
And also, Joey pointed out that there's retro computers in the IT crowd.
CF, my list.
Oh, coming
right.
in. Alrighty then. And there's some other comments too. Thank you. Keep those coming in.
Nice. Okay. Well, that does it for me.
Excellent. Yeah, that's all right. But I was planning on the IT crowd was in the show notes. so,
Yep.
But thank you, Joey, for mentioning it.
I see it.
Great minds think alike.
But okay, let's see. Carrington, you have
Me. Okay, yes. So thinking about this, I tried to pick first I was trying to pick like one representative thing per decade because there's a million things you could pick. My mind went to movies rather than TV. There's now all I can do is think about the IT crowd. Now that we've mentioned it, I want to go back and watch everything immediately again. It's that good. But starting with the 1950s, my first choice was Desk Set, which is an old Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn movie about a computer. So he plays a methods engineer, whatever the heck that is, and he's bringing a big old computer like the size of a house into automate a thing, and Katharine Hepburn. It's your typical Battle of the Sexes movie that they did over and over again. So it's the MRAC, which I think was electromagnetic memory and research something calculator, probably arithmetic calculator, something like that. Anyway, so it's an ENIAC ripoff. She plays somebody named Bunny, which we'll come back to later in the episode. So it's a call forward to. I will be talking about somebody else named Bunny video in our show notes. And it's sort of a predecessor to Electric Dreams, in that you got a guy who's kind of in love with a computer in this case, though, and then falls for Bunny, and Bunny's not sure if he loves him more than the computer, so she's going to set it to self-destruct and see if he'll turn it off or let it destroy stuff. It's, 1950s. For the 60s, I'm picking Alphaville, which is a really good black and white film noir. It's a technocratic future, so a computer called the Alpha 60 runs everything, and it's banned all emotions. So it's exactly the movie you would expect from that. So it's originally called, the original title was Tarzan versus IBM. So it's great. Highly recommended. Have any of you guys seen Alphaville? It's a weird little cult film.
No, I haven't heard of that. I saw Dusk Set at some point in the past.
Okay, yeah. That said, it's a little easier to come by. Alphaville is a French film. I think the full title was The Strange Adventure of Lemmy Caution. That's the guy's name in it. But it's not like, I'm making it sound like a comedy. It's not. It takes itself very seriously. But it's good. It's like a good film noir, black and white, hardcore film about computers and technology in the 1960s. So that's neat. For the 1970s, I figured somebody's going to talk about Colossus. That would have been my choice. But instead, I'm going to go with World on a Wire, which might be a little obscure if you don't know your German stuff. So it was a German 2-part miniseries from 1973. And it was kind of remade as The 13th Floor. So in 1999, when all the films got rushed out. 1999 was a great year for film. Anyway, it's a 2-part miniseries that's worth watching. It's 3.5 hours or something total, and it's about a company that runs a computer that can simulate a reality. So 9,000 people are living inside this computer, and it's about the company that runs the computer. And the people inside the computer don't know they're in a simulation, except one of them needs to, because it's the person you can communicate with to control it. And then somebody in the building that runs the computer starts thinking there's a lot of stuff in common here, and starts to think that they're also in a simulation, and tries to figure out how to talk to one simulation up from the world they live in. And it's neat. So kind of a slow burn, but good. And much better than the 13th Floor, I think. So that's my choice for 1970s. 1980s, there's like a million things, because it's the best decade that ever was. I think, what did I put in the show notes here? I think I picked Crosstalk, probably.
Yep.
What did I pick? Crosstalk. Okay, Crosstalk is good. It's an Australian film. This one is hard to discuss. I would recommend it. It's spoilery, but it's about a computer that's like murderous. There's a lot of murderous computers in the 1980s, but this one has a reason to be murderous, and is trying to communicate, in a sense, through its murder, but also trying to communicate to a one person. So it's kind of a mix of Rear Window with murderous computers in the 1980s in a neat early 80s Australian film. And the CompuColor 2 is the featured computer, the murderous CompuColor 2. So if you ever want to see, like, how could a CompuColor 2 start bumping people off, and it can adjust blood pressure and things like that, it's neat. So I don't know if I mentioned it specifically, but there's so many great ones from the 80s. There's Evil Speak with Clint Howard, Ron Howard's brother, B-movie staple, and he summons Satan through his computer, and he's cutting people's heads off. Like, if you like horror movies from the 80s, it's a great one. And Takeover is about a guy named George. It's another one of those computers that's simulating things. So George runs a software firm that makes simulations, and so George is running a piece of software called the George One, which is a simulation of himself. And when George's life becomes really crappy, his home life, George One says, the only solution is to kill yourself, and the computer's trying to convince him to commit suicide. So that's Takeover from 1987. That's a good one. Or the Rachel Papers, if you have a soft spot. That's about a guy who uses an Amiga 500 to try to win a lady and play a lot of battle chess. So if you're an Amiga fan, Rachel Papers could be good. For the 90s, I honestly thought I was going to have to pick something like The Net or something cheesy, because all the 90s movies are terrible. And I figured or Johnny Mnemonic. I like that kind. But nobody talked about Triumph for the Nerds or Pirates of Silicon Valley. Two obvious choices. So not really about specific computers, but about computers, and kind of looking back. So Triumph for the Nerds, basically about the development of the computer from the 1940s through to the then present, like mid-1990s. Or Pirates of Silicon Valley, which weirdly has Anthony Michael Hall well cast as Bill Gates. And you wouldn't think Anthony Michael Hall and well cast would ever be like put together in a sentence, but whatever. It's weird. I can't remember who plays Steve Jobs.
It's
Noah Wyle.
Noah Wyle.
I remember Steve. Sorry, go ahead.
You can
I was
say
going
the
to say.
same thing,
I was
no
going to
doubt.
say. I was going to say. I think it's of all the Jobs movies. I think by far Pirates of Silicon Valley is the best. That gives the history of Apple, and I mean it also includes several other things that are happening. Microsoft, but I think even if you just look at the Apple side of it, because there's so many Jobs movies, I find it by far the best.
I agree. Did you know about the time Noah Wiley appeared at Macworld?
Keynote. Yeah, he started the keynote.
It's because Steve Jobs had contacted him and told him, I hate the movie and I think it's terrible and it's very poorly made. But I like your portrayal of me because you kind of look like me. Like, that is the compliment. That's all he was able to come. It's, oh, and by the way, do you want to come and be at Macworld? I'm like, oh, Steve Jobs, you were such a monster. Wow. Hackers is the 1990s. Nobody wants to talk about that, but I remember all the duos in it. My gosh. For the 2000, I would pick Computer Chess, which is not from the 80s, but it's set in the 1980s, so it's still kind of retro. A black and white film. It's a black and white indie film from 2013, so you can just imagine how seriously it takes itself. But it's still a good film. Like, it's a good little indie film. I would recommend it. And for the 2010s, I don't know what we call that decade now, I'd say the John Wick series, because it's a great action series. People use VIC-20s in it, and I don't even know why, but like the hotel that manages everything, it's a bunch of VIC-20s, and I have no idea why, but they look really cool. So go watch John Wick kick everybody's butt because they hurt his dog, and you can see VIC-20s in the films. So those were my choices. So many computers. So many computers in film.
The computers are, in fact, actually, they're not supposed to be old. They're supposed to be just in use.
Yeah, I think they're using them because you couldn't hack them or something. Like, I don't understand. Like, everyone's just using VIC-20s. And I think some other retro computers too, but they keep zooming in on VIC-20s.
So you mentioned Triumph of the Nerds and Pirates of Silicon Valley as I didn't know. I had never seen Triumph of the Nerds. I do agree with Pirates of Silicon Valley. That's an excellent
It's
movie.
the good one of the two, I think.
But of course, when I read Triumph of the Nerds, I just assumed it was like Revenge of the Nerds 2.
Oh. No.
So this is actually like a historical.
Wasn't Triumph of the Nerds? Wasn't that a documentary?
Yeah,
Actually,
it's a documentary.
Crinchley.
Much better.
Yeah, it's a documentary about the computer development for like the 50 years up to it. So yeah, it's worth watching. Yeah, Revenge of the Nerds movies. If you have any memory of them being good or not insanely offensive, just don't go back.
Yeah.
Don't rewatch them. You cannot watch those things with modern sensibility. And
Some
not
movies don't age well.
Never again.
Never. Like, I watched the original Revenge of the Nerds just a few years ago, and I was like, I have to take a shower. I can't believe as a kid I thought this was some sort of comedy instead of like the most offensive thing on film. It's shocking. The nerds are not the good guys, man. The nerds are not the good guys in that film. I had no idea.
I read an article a few years ago that highlighted some of the lowlights, and I was like, "Oh my god, I forgot." Yeah, that and that and that.
Yeah,
oh,
it's amazing because they're supposed to be the heroes and the jocks are the bad guys. I'm like, no, the jocks are kind of crappy and the nerds are monsters. Who knew? Yeah.
Very weird. Jack, were there any things that you wanted to put in?
What have we left?
I didn't make a list or anything like that. You guys covered a lot of stuff, and which is good. But for me, the thing that has been sort of a keynote of computers in movies and TV throughout my life is that I've almost always thought it always sucks. Like, people who make TV and make movies don't understand how computers work.
I don't think they care.
97% of the time, it's just like, oh, let's make a scene with a computer in it, and some crazy stuff happens, and it's
always so wrong.
It's always so wrong. And I want to point out the one current exception that is pleasing me a lot. It's a small bit of it. There's a series called Manhunt Unabomber, currently on Netflix. It's a new series, and it's set in 1995 and 1997. In the pursuit of the Unabomber, and then the aftermath when he's in jail and he's about to go on trial. And in that, like, it's not, the computers aren't the central thing, but when they do show a computer, it is very clearly it's a computer that looks like it's from the 90s. And in one scene, it's like, yep, that's Windows 95. And another one, it's like, yep, that's either Windows 3.1 or maybe OS 2. Like, and very much like, not doing anything crazy, not doing anything like totally out of character for what you would do with a computer at that time. Dial-up modems, all this kind of thing. So
Nice. They must have a good technical consultant.
yeah, they must have. So that was nice for change. But I remember, especially when I was a teenager, when I was a kid, I would get excited about movies that were science fiction or had some premise involving computers, and then when I would see it, I would always be like, "Oh man, that's just ridiculous."
Yeah.
But I do remember that some things that, even though they were ridiculous, like Electric Dream, I really liked that movie when it came out.
I think maybe
So
The Net was the first movie that I saw, if I'm remembering right, where they decided we needed an IP address version of the 555 for phone numbers in all of the movies. They had IP addresses with things like 300s and 400s in them and stuff like that. I was like, wow, did we add some extra bits to IP? But, obviously they did that so that somebody wouldn't start pinging the IP addresses that they were showing in the movie, just like they use the 555 numbers for the phone numbers in the movie, so people don't start crank calling them. But just bugs me. Like that, it's like, I don't like that. That's my rant for the day.
No, it is pretty frustrating. I remember having those same thoughts. Actually, one of the things that I was, that makes me think about is Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot seems like I haven't actually watched that all the way to the end, but often they ride fairly close to the line of plausible. What they're typing is stuff that you could type at like a Linux command prompt, and maybe exactly what they're doing. And I forget exactly even how the plot works anymore. It's been so long since I've watched it, but I do remember thinking, oh, okay, well, they didn't call attention to it, but they did type the right stuff at the command line. So,
well, and again, with your audience probably isn't going to know what you're doing, right? Or if you're getting it right or wrong. I'm thinking back to the original Terminator when he was listing off his subroutines. Weren't they in 6502? I remember something like I guess they want to be cost effective with their Terminators.
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to make Terminators cost effective.
32-bit chips.
I think it's the case that everything is always wrong in all computers, in all movies, because they just want to make a good story and they'll sacrifice everything else. So the thing that you know about, if you know about computers, all the computers seem wrong. I bet if you know about gardening, all the gardening stuff in every movie is terrible. I think just everything is wrong in every movie. And even if they make movies about making movies, I love movies about making movies. Those are often all wrong. I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's reality. Who cares? It's a movie. So I think it's just everything's wrong all the time. I should mention, I can't believe I didn't think of this. I want to change one of my choices. 1990, it should be the KGB, The Computer and Me, which is the Cliff Stoll thing for the Cuckoo's Egg. I love Cliff Stoll and his Klein Bottle stuff, and like that's a good nerd guy.
There's a movie.
There's a movie, yeah. It was like a direct-to-TV movie. I think it was direct-to-TV from 1990, and it stars Cliff Stoll. It's basically just him playing himself about what he did 4 years earlier, about like being an astronomer nerd and finding that small, like 50 cents or 75 cent discrepancy, and then tracking down a KGB mole or whatever. And it's a great little hacking movie, and I would recommend it. I like Cliff Stoll a lot. So
I love that book.
Yep, yeah, I love the book too. So you should see the movie. The movie is, hypothetically, if you went to YouTube and typed in the Cuckoo's Egg, you'd probably find the entire film.
I might find it.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. I was thinking that also in the context when I was thinking about Mr. Robot, that I think also is relatively accurate, as to what he was doing. The book is super detailed about exactly how he was following the path.
I recommend the book. It's a great read. I really like it.
And Earl, you said you had lunch with him at some point, right? With Cliff Stoll?
I did.
Oh, it was you?
Yep.
No, yeah, it wasn't me.
Okay.
Would have loved to, but
yeah, as a birthday gift. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Excellent.
Not from him. I didn't say I gave you lunch with me.
That's right. Very cool. Well,
I know somebody who knows him, and so I got lucky. It was awesome. He's great. He is what you would think he would be. He is in person exactly he's Cliff Stoll all the time, 24/7, and it's great. We talked about Klein bottles. He's really, really excited about Klein bottles. Really sustainably excited about Klein bottles.
Excellent. Well, okay, so I had a couple of things. So my focus had been basically on modern shows in which old computers feature. I feel like, I don't know if this is newly true, but it sort of seems like it's newly true that like everybody who makes TV is now our age or something like that and looks fondly back on the 80s. And so suddenly there's a big, rush of things that were set in the 80s. So *Halt and Catch Fire* is sort of an obvious one. I'm sure we've talked about that several times.
Now, would you? I've seen the first series or the first season of *Halt and Catch Fire*. Is it worth continuing on?
Well, it's been a little while since it stopped. I think it. My memory was that it dipped a little bit, but then got better.
Okay, so I didn't like the end of the first series. I was like, okay,
you're right.
I'm not going on.
So I'm about to start watching it on Netflix.
Well, then you'll
one
let
of the
us
things
know.
that I did before I jumped in was to check out the reviews, things like Rotten Tomatoes and other sites like that.
Mm-hmm.
It got great reviews. I mean, the series as a whole. So I figured it's definitely going to be worth my time.
Yeah, and I mean, so it's sort of somewhere on the boundary between realistic and not. I mean, so there's some stuff where you just think that's like the least smart way you could do this thing that you're trying to do.
You mean like the
whatever.
chain of LEDs when you're trying to reverse engineer the BIOS? Yeah.
For example,
I always use LEDs for that.
Always.
But yeah, I mean, like it's still, yeah, I mean, it's fun to see all the computers around each season is basically them inventing a new industry. Basically, I think the first season was them sort of starting up essentially Compaq, and then I forget exactly which seasons were which, but they also started up something which is essentially like, and now I'm forgetting the name of it again, but the Commodore virtual place that turned into AOL later.
Oh my gosh.
Quantum Link.
Yeah, Quantum Link. And then there was like a sub game within that. I think it was called Habitat.
Yeah.
That everybody loved.
So I think that one season was basically them doing that. But yeah, no, I think that was interesting. But it definitely, it was set at a time when all these computers were around. So, and I think that's actually one thing that's kind of neat about these new things is that we have like HD video of old computers professionally shot.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good point.
So,
Yeah.
Sometimes it can even feel like if you're watching. Well, Stranger Things was another one that does that, and the Goldbergs too. And I think both of those sort of capture the 80s relatively well.
Yep. Stranger Things, definitely. I haven't seen
Love
Goldbergs.
Stranger Things. So good.
So good.
I've watched. I agree with you. I think *Halt and Catch Fire*. I really like the first, and the end of it sort of you wanted to see what the second season was going to be about, and maybe there was a dip. I like it, but then I kind of stepped away from it because other things came up. Did it end after three seasons? *Halt and Catch Fire*, or is it?
I think it was 4.
Okay, but it's over.
It is over, yeah.
Okay. I do want to watch it, but I haven't. There's other things. I need to.
I thought it was 4 also. I'll look that up.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
There are so many things to watch.
Yeah, there really are.
Plus, I'm about to rewatch all of the IT Crowd, apparently. So
Yeah, right. But yeah, so and there was The Americans too. That was set in the 80s. These the spy couple, deep cover spy couple, and I think I'm trying to remember. I think what used to be called the Mid-Atlantic Retro Computing Society or whatever they are, March, now part of VC Fed, had participated in giving them some of the machines. I think that's correct.
Oh, cool.
But if it wasn't them, there's definitely we know some people who had machines in the show.
It was probably Blake.
Right. And actually Young Sheldon too, which is this sort of like 80s spin-off of The Big Bang Theory, which is like Sheldon as a kid. That has, he's got a computer on his desk, and occasionally there are computers that show up and stuff like that. And that show, actually, I don't mind that show. The Big Bang Theory, I kind of don't like.
I liked The Big Bang Theory when it first started, and then it lost me hard. So
Yeah.
I went from being a fan to being an unfan.
Yeah.
I don't know what the word for unfan is.
Yeah, I kept the same. I was a fan for several years, and then eventually just like, you know what? I've had enough of them mocking Sheldon for everything all the time. It's like, just
Yeah.
at some point, it's just like, this is just like, they're not even his friends. They're just being abusive, and it's just like,
Well, it did kind of become one of those things like most sitcoms where the friends are not actually friends. You sit back and go, but you guys are really dysfunctional.
right.
Yeah.
Halt-
No, and
Halt and
even,
Catch Fire is 4 seasons, by the way.
Okay,
4.
Okay.
thanks.
I can count.
yeah, and I think with the thing about the Big Bang Theory too is that even up when you step away from the internal dynamics of the people, what the audience is supposed to find funny is like it's sort of just like it's kind of mean in a way. It's kind of like
Right.
look at this dumb way all these people operate. Unlike us normal humans.
Right. Let's laugh at the nerds. Then one day I realized, oh wait, I'm the nerds.
Yeah. But Young Sheldon
The
seems less
existence
like
of Dungeons and Dragons isn't inherently funny.
right. So the Goldbergs had a spin-off called Schooled, which is is set in the 1990s.
I did not know that.
And so it's not bad. It's got it's some of the characters carried over, but now there's like a Mac Mac Plus in the dorm room and that kind of thing. So one thing that I think I've mentioned a fair bit before, as things came up, is Blind Spot. I'm not sure that I like the show that much, but I really kind of like their dedication to bringing in retro stuff. So there was a time when like one sort of lead character tech person got, and I'm forgetting exactly what it is, but I think she was talking about how she loved Oregon Trail, and somebody got her a floppy disk of Oregon Trail as a gift. And then there was another point where they had to like solve some puzzle that involved like Logo, where they would like drive the turtle around and stuff.
That's awesome.
There's a bunch of stuff sort of stuck in there. And Jack, you had at some point you had mentioned Preacher had
Right.
like a Commodore in it at some point. I put that in my list just because I remember you mentioned it, but
Yeah, that's right. At some point, I think it was maybe, I don't remember if it was the first or second season, but there was like a bad guy character who was somebody who like he ran like a meat processing plant or something, and like and so he's just kind of like a terrible evil executive, but like not of a huge world dominating corporation, but just like local bad guy. And on his desk it was either a VIC-20 or a Commodore 64. I don't remember.
cool.
But it's supposed to be set in modern times. It's not set at the 80s or anything.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
funny.
I shifted without mentioning it, but I shifted into shows that are set now, but with old computers in them. So Blind Spot's like that. That's a total current show. In fact, the in the show, in the fiction of the show, in the world of the show, that person who got the Oregon Trail disc, her father is Bill Nye, the science guy.
Oh, huh.
Oh,
So he shows up occasionally in the show. But yeah, I mean, so that's modern, but looking back at retro, and I guess Preacher was the same.
yeah.
Lost, everybody, like if you can sort of remember Lost, that was kind of the same. It was sort of current, but with an old computer around.
That was an Apple,
Yeah.
wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't branded.
Apple II Plus.
Yeah.
It looked like an Apple to me.
No, it was branded, I think, wasn't it?
I don't recall seeing an Apple on it.
Yeah.
Really?
I
But
was
it was-
watching when they would like type in the numbers to keep the place
Right.
from blowing up.
Right. Well, the thing was, he had been like, yes, it was set more recently, but he'd been down there for some time. I think maybe when that room that it was in was constructed, that was a current machine. I think was the thought.
Fair point.
I used to be a huge Lost fan.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. What else did I put? I put so Carrington, you mentioned Devs. I
Yes.
didn't go back and look at that, but I guess there's a pet somewhere in there.
There totally is some dude who's normally funny who's not funny in this.
Yeah.
He has a CPM machine. I think it's a pet of some sort.
Okay.
Yep. That's a
and-
good show. I would recommend that show. That was good.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I guess we talked about this last time, but it was after we stopped recording.
Oh,
So, but yes, it is good. I put Timeless down. I don't know if people have seen Timeless, but Timeless is sort of like a time travel show, but they don't tend to travel to places where there are old computers. However, they're in their sort of like bunker. There is there's like a shelf and some stuff around, and there's an old I think it's TRS-80 Model 3 or something, Model 4 or something, sitting on the just sitting there. So I thought that was kind of cool.
How could you have a time machine and not travel back and go to like a Radio Shack or something, or Computer World? Yeah. Oh my God, what I'd do to go back to like 1983 and just go shopping. I'm a minimalist, and I would be just in heaven doing that.
It's not a bad show, but mostly they're going back to like further history, Civil War and that kind of stuff. But and then the IT Crowd was the last thing I had, I think, in this list. And so that is set in the basically the present, but it's a bunch of like computer tech guys in the basement of the company, and they've decorated the room with like all of the stuff that we collect, so it's quite fun. I think this is Graham Linehan's show, and I think this was his I think it's his sensibility that went into like decorating that office. So anyway, but that's also good. It's also it has its ups and downs, but it's pretty good.
Nice.
I think that was about it for the shows and stuff. Anything else anyone wants to interject? Now that we're like a half hour in.
There's a book series, if you like fantasy things. I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I think it's pretty good. It's this book called Magic 2.0. Do you guys know the Scott Meyer books? Off to Be the Wizard, etc.
No.
So it's I just thought of it because you were saying the time travel stuff. So first book is Off to Be the Wizard. It's a series of 6 fantasy novels about time travel and magicians, but the magicians are magicians because in their time they discover a file on a computer that's way bigger than the computer could possibly have a file on. So you'll hack into a network, and then that file turns out to be the file of the universe. So you can find yourself in it, and you can make a little change, and suddenly you're 17 feet tall, or you can like put yourself a different place in space. It turns out we're in a computer simulation. Everybody who finds this file does something stupid to draw attention to themselves, and the police come calling because you give yourself $1 billion to do something stupid. And almost everybody who finds this file figures, if I have to escape, where can I get away? And they pick this place in like medieval England where you could go back in time, and if you had access to this, you'd be like a wizard. And people just keep going back in time, and that's where all these wizards come from. So it's about wizards back in time using their computers from the period. So like one of the main characters has a Commodore 64, and so he's back in medieval England with a Commodore 64, and he uses that to pretend he's got magical abilities and stuff. So it's a comedy thing. It's weird, but it uses all vintage computers, and everybody kind of snarkily won't tell anybody else about their own future. So like if somebody comes back in time because they found the file in the 1960s and they've got their type of computer, people from the 1980s will mock them with their high-end Macs, but people from the 2030s will make fun of the Mac people and won't tell them like what happened later. So, well, you'll just have to wait till you get back there and find out, won't you? So it's a fun series because it's got lots of vintage computer stuff in it. So if you like that kind of...
What's it called?
The series is Magic 2.0. First book is Off to Be the Wizard by Scott Meyer, Meyer. So they're very fast reads.
Recently written, or
yeah, very recent. Yeah, like it's a current series. I think the first book was probably 2013, 2014, something like that. So,
nice. I'll check it out.
Yeah, seems good.
Yeah, they're available. I just think they're also an audiobook to listen to other people read to you, but they're really fast reads. They're like sit down in one evening and you're done kind of thing. So.
Excellent.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So as predicted, I suppose there's a ton of stuff, and a ton of stuff we skipped too, I'm sure. But it's always kind of fun to kind of see
fun
old computers on your screens. And it is for those of us who have collected them. If Hollywood starts wanting them, here we are. Though, in fact, I mean, I know that if you're a museum and Hollywood wants to borrow your thing, you will probably think twice and charge a lot because Hollywood
probably
might
won't
not
get it back.
return it to you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I've
Or
heard that.
they might return it to you, but paint it orange because it fit the set. So, okay. Perhaps I can move on. I will move on to listener feedback. So, let's see. I have a couple of things here. Quinn wrote on Twitter saying regarding the Quantel machine that we were wondering about. Believes the unit is a point of sale terminal. an electronic cash register, and not really a retro computer at all. And to give us a link that the company still exists. So I'm trying to remember.
Interesting. Was that 2 shows ago, I think? Because did I bring that up? I wasn't on the last show.
Yeah, I think it was 2 shows ago because in real world time, the previous episode isn't out yet.
Sorry. You can edit that out.
Yeah, no, I think this was this must have been like the 68K machine that you'd never heard of.
Yeah, I think that was the thing, right? It had a 68,000, and that's why. But of course, point of sale, if it's, it's just a simple embedded situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's less exciting than I'd hoped. Thanks, Quinn.
No, truly thanks, though. But let's see. And so Spectron, I don't know who the person is, but Spectron on Twitter linked us to a YouTube video of a Spectrum Next unboxing, which is kind of cool. So unboxing videos, there's probably not a whole lot of retro computing unboxing videos. This is sort of on the line, I suppose, of whether it's retro computing or not. It's a new computer, but it's a retro computer as well. But so if you wanted to see what comes in your Spectrum Next, you can head to YouTube and check that out. Bob wrote on email to tell us about some new Commodore 64 printed circuit boards. So I guess it's basically a repair part, and these are on Tindy, and they come in different colors. So in the photo you can get, I see a black one and a blue one and a red one, and I think they're kits that so this is a kit that you would solder together, but this is the motherboard part. So anyway, I don't know, is this something that people tend to need?
Can you show me that again, Paul?
It's I guess I could try to share the screen.
It's a bare circuit board, right?
Yeah. Let's see. What happened? Did it work? Yeah.
It did. These.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've shared the wrong thing though. Hold on.
I'm sharing it as well. So.
Okay. I want to stop that just so I've got to figure. I want to share just a window, not my entire computer.
So those are neat. Now, if you want to populate it, you're going to have all the parts to put in there. And it would be good, I think, for a couple of purposes. One is if the printed circuit board of your C64 has suffered some sort of extreme damage. The second thing is if you're just a modder who wants a cool colored printed circuit board and you want to build a Commodore 64 from scratch.
Cool.
And I think they're very reasonably priced. $35.
$35, yeah. Shipping to anywhere in the US starts at $20. Ships from the UK. So yeah. So if that's something of interest, that's kind of neat. If you have
the other factor to think about there is that I'm not sure how many, but some number of chips within a Commodore 64 now have modern day replacements. Like you could use a CPLD or an FPGA or some circuitry or something like that to replace. And sometimes the replacements aren't 100%. Sometimes they are very close to or at 100%. But if you're building your own and you want to get as many modern parts as possible, and then for the parts that you can't source, new old stock or whatever, maybe those could come out of a broken machine or something like that. So you could have a reasonably new Commodore 64 with this.
And these are intended to go as direct replacements. I mean, they fit. So, okay, let's see. So, thanks, Bob. If people didn't know about that, now maybe they will. And John Mark wrote over email to correct us about the Alice. We said false things about the Alice. It is a little red. It's a little red computer. I think we said that it was a ZX Spectrum clone, but it is not. It is it's an MC10 clone. machine that you wouldn't have thought someone would want to clone.
I would not have thought that.
And it's not even an entire clone, right? I didn't think the Alice was 100%, or is it? We're going to say more wrong things so that we can be corrected again.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's basically an MC10 clone, but I'm not sure if there are places of incompatibility. But it is runs on a 6803. It has 4K RAM unless you splurge and get the upgrade, which can get you to 20K.
That's too much RAM.
Yeah. But
it's
it's
physically
really cool.
shaped sort of like the MC10 as well, right? It's red, but isn't it
Yeah.
physically shaped about the same? That like a little book.
Yeah, it let's see. It is actually the MC10, it's the Alice. What are we talking about? The Alice has a nice shape to it. It's a red sort of like trapezoid. The MC10 looks like nothing in particular. It's just tiny. But yeah, I think the MC10 was not very good. But I mean, it was cheap.
So it was cheap, and it had a keyboard to remind you of the fact.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. So another thing that we got was an email from Stephen, who pointed out that so we've talked a little bit about the what's called the Plato System, right? So this was an old sort of multi-user time sharing, or not time sharing, but I don't know maybe it was time sharing, but it was basically lots of people would connect to it. It had sort of a graphical interface. It was used a lot in education, and there were also some games for it. And so there was a game called Camelot, and that is now working on the Cyber One Plato emulator. And there's actually a book, and this is the news part. The guidebook was finished, and it is written by Josh Tabin, who actually was the one who wrote Camelot originally. So he's put together this 101-page guidebook to how you play the game, like what the history was, and various other things. So it's pretty cool. It's a role-playing game in the it's kind of wizardry-like, although maybe you might say wizardry is kind of it.
It's kind of opposite way around, right?
But
I might just interject for a minute, and I don't think I've mentioned this before on an earlier show, but there's a book. We've talked about Plato in the past, and there's some Plato projects that are happening now. But there's a book, one of the more recent, I guess it's the most recent tech book or computing history book I've read, called The Friendly Orange Glow, and it actually describes it's by Brian Deere. It describes the creation of the Plato System, which had some revolutionary networking capabilities, and it's had an interesting take on a high resolution graphic display when there wasn't really any RAM. Basically, without using almost no RAM at all, utilizing a plasma persistent state display. But anyway, it was also notably one of the only landmark texts of this sort and magnitude that was developed in the Midwest. It had been typically Silicon Valley or East Coast, and so I think there's the book goes into a lot of details about the significance of that part of the country and what was going on then, and a lot of people being unaware of the sorts of things that were happening there. So it's certainly a good read. I just wanted to mention that since we're talking about Plato.
I think we've mentioned the book at some point, but none of us had read it.
Okay.
So
yeah,
good to
I
hear
might
that-
even own it.
Okay. Yeah, it's available in audiobook. I read it. I own the hardback. I wanted to have it. It seemed like a notable book, and it was very enjoyable. But yeah, I do know it's available on audiobook, and So
Yeah, I think it may have been about then around the publication of this book that Plato really became something that I'd heard about. Like I didn't know Plato. Plato was not part of my life before, but it is it's interesting that it existed and was part of a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I'll add one more detail is the fact I was aware of it in like 1983, but not for reasons that really that I should have. There was the Plato teaching system was networked, and it involved multiple people being connected to this network, and it had networking was a big piece of it. But Texas Instruments contracted with whoever it is, the organization behind driving Plato, and they created a series of courseware cartridges that were educational, and they used the Plato learning system. But I think they didn't actually contain a Plato, because Plato involved a client terminal emulator sort of thing, and it didn't have any networking. It didn't involve a full Plato rendering, which actually does exist now on the TI as part of a recent effort, with the current online Plato systems. But TI really advertised heavily. Like, they had a whole series of ads, and they had like 20 cartridges. And I remember I owned some of them because I was, 11 or 12 when I had the TI. And so my parents were buying educational software, and I would do my best to prevent that from happening. But yeah, it was Plato, but in the loosest terms. So I oddly heard about it decades ago, but I didn't know what it was really until this book came out.
Yeah, I think I'd heard about so this, I believe, is control data that was behind that. I think I'd heard about those sort of standalone things myself too, but I didn't know until a couple of years ago that it was this big network thing as well.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's a couple of I have not fully wrapped my head around all of this stuff. Cyber One is one of the Plato hosts that you can connect to, and that's where this game is. This Camelot game is. We've talked a number of times about Errata Online, which is IRATA, which is another one, but it's not the same. So it doesn't connect to the Cyber One. You can use the same terminal, but it's kind of a different host. So,
yeah, and notably, as we mentioned before, the Cherry Home behind the effort of Errata Online managed to basically write a client for every retro computing system that exists, which is sort of astounding. So like I said, the TI has a client, the Apple II, the Amiga. There's even a native client for the Mindset computer, which
that's crazy.
Which something I mean, 4 people own one. I'm going to mention that computer in another segment coming up, but today
if we ever get there.
Yeah. So anyway,
yeah. Anyway, it's cool. I was going to try to try out this Camelot thing, but it turns out that in order to get a Cyber One account, you have to sort of submit a registration, and you might hear back in a week. So and it's not on the Errata Online system. It's only on the Cyber One, I guess. So anyway, that was cool though. I mean, not something I knew, and I think that's actually really quite nifty that the original author wrote up this book.
Yeah, exactly. The fact that he did it is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Okay, I think I will leave the feedback there.
Okay, can I do one real quick fact check? So the internet says that the Alice is a complete clone of the MC-10.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to listen to the
cancel
internet.
Your sending of emails.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was thinking about not the small MC-10, but I thought there was a Coco clone or something like that. I was getting that confused with. It wasn't a 100% clone, but the Alice is. So
yeah, Tano Dragon might be what you're thinking.
Dragon?
Yes, thank you.
British or UK.
So that was, I think, a not quite Coco clone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's really testing our knowledge here. It's very good. Very good. All staying mentally alert. Okay, and speaking of mentally alert, Blake, you have the first thing.
Okay, let's see. Items of news and interest. Okay.
Nice segue, right?
Yes. Thank you. It was so smooth. You caught me by surprise. So sadly, just a little wanted to mention here. BBS is something I often talk about, and Bill Metcalfe is a BBS game developer who passed away since the last show, I think on the 6th of May. He had, a lot of people, I'm sure not a huge amount of people were following his work, but he had a number of BBS games for the Atari 8-bit boards. I guess utilizing the ATASCII, emulation. But he let's see, he co-owned. He worked with Tom McComb, and they wrote a number of BBS games, and they ran under the BBS Express Pro bulletin board system software. I had heard mention of him I hang out in an IRC, Atari IRC group, even though I'm not a huge, lifelong Atari guy. And
You're a mole.
A mole. I mean, I like I've had some ST time in my past, and there's one on the desk, but yeah. But yeah, it's always sad to see someone who has contributed to, the notable pockets of things that we brought us joy in the past online. He was 62, and he was the co-owner of I don't know how you pronounce circular or IRCular.
I think it's
logic.
circular logic.
Circular
the
logic.
ad is just a C. Yeah.
Yes, the ad is a C. Sorry, circular logic. But anyway, I thought that I'd mention that, having encountered that. And then the only other item that I have here today is I was leaving a comment on a video that was done by the iBook guy, who now goes by the name the 8-bit guy. I think that most of us know his YouTube channel. He was comparing the Macintosh to the Apple IIgs, and I was making a comment. As I did, I noticed, I looked at some of the comments on the post, and it's not a new video. It's a couple of years old, and the post I'm referring to is a year old, and it's Dan Oliver, and I'd seen his name before on some, I don't know if it was a screenshot from credits of a demo, or if it was just in some documents regarding Apple's history. But he was on the Apple IIgs team. I believe he was a fairly notable person on the team, and he talks about he just goes into some detail over a few paragraphs about what the feeling was of the Apple II team at the time when the GS was coming out, when it was going up against the Mac, and how Apple viewed the Mac. And these were two machines that could not really, like the Apple II and the Macintosh, weren't going to coexist for a great deal of time. And he shares some interesting insight on that. And there are some pieces that I hadn't been aware of. I think I'll let people read it. We'll provide the link, but it's interesting that at some point, when it looks like the team was deciding where the 2GS was going to go, even the Mac team seemed to, as he tells it, they were aware of the fact that they were trying to sell the current computers, but there wasn't for a while even a plan. Like, it didn't seem immediately obvious to Apple that they had to keep making bigger and better Macs, and so it
wouldn't be just like, that's the Macintosh.
Yeah, here's the Macintosh, and now we'll figure something else out. And of course, finally the Mac 2 and Mac SE came. But yeah, so it's interesting. It's just an interesting perspective, and in the responses he responds back himself. So it's an interesting read. Mm-hmm. And we'll do a link to the specific comment, but I hadn't encountered it, and it seems interesting perspective.
I thought so too. I thought it was fascinating how he was saying how the Mac team was so insanely upset that they did a 6-color logo for the 2GS in the UI.
Well, the 2GS, right? Because the GSO. Well, it wasn't like, I don't think it was GSOS by name at first, but the first Finder that Apple called the Finder that was on the 2GS was, of course, it followed the Mac, but it was the first time that desktop was presented in color, because the GS had color and it had its 640 by 200 resolution screen, and it was very easy for it to do a 6-color logo in the menu bar. And apparently that really upset the it's not a particularly high resolution Apple if you compare it to the clean black and white of the Mac, but it's in color, and it's an interesting tidbit, but I guess I'm kind of not surprised when you think about that. But so certainly worth a read.
It is really cool when things like this will bring in players from the day, someone who was on the team or someone who wrote the software or whatever. That is really neat when these happen. And it occurs to me that this is an archiving risk now, because even if you capture the video, those comments. I don't know if there's any way to archive those comments. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. There have been I've seen blog posts. I mean, having run my own blog, Retro Computer blog, since it's 2004. It's been quite a few years. Sometimes someone will happen in response to something I wrote, maybe in a week, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 8 years, and I try to something that's really gold like that. I'll try to kind of update the post and put it in the post, and I know that there's a better chance that, as archive.org grabs it, it's going to be there. I don't know how comments will be prioritized. Are they always going to be, as tightly held as the main content? But you're right on something like the comments on YouTube or, good Lord, Facebook, that's just not what you're not. Often I'll cut, I'll cut and paste a huge swath of text. I've got this notes section where I just dump things that seem, this is something I want to see 10 years from now, and I'm probably not going to be able to find it. But I'm not helping people out by having it on my notepad.
No.
Just I worry about these things.
Yeah, I definitely worry about that. It occurred to me, I think a couple times ago, I talked about I had digitized some Apple videotapes or something at some point and put them up, and I got copyright strikes, and so I took them down. But I don't think there were any comments on there, but that's the situation where you would lose treasured comments if the video itself can't stay up. Because
right.
I think once it's struck, the comments are gone too.
Yeah, and I would imagine that the search engines, not to belabor the hypothetically how these archive engines are going to handle comments, but especially when you have WordPress. Here's the WordPress comment chunk. Here's a blog. Here's the discuss comment chunk. They are able to identify comments, and if they're going to make a call on what data am I going to save, I feel like comments maybe would be dropped. It seems like possibly the comments would be dropped because that's not core content. Potentially. So,
yeah. All right. Anyway, okay, we can move on to more Apple II stuff.
Well, actually, it's modern Macintosh stuff that it's connected to the Apple II. So graphic converter version 11. Graphic converter has been around for ever on the Mac, and I have, like most people, I've got the whole suite of all the Adobe software and blah blah blah, but graphic converter is one of those pieces of software that I've been using for a million years that I keep updated because it is the absolute Swiss Army knife of opening old graphics file formats. You can throw anything at it and it always seems to know how to open stuff and convert it. It is a great piece of software. When even Photoshop, sometimes you get a JPEG, it'll say that's no. Graphics converter is like, yeah, I got you fam. It just handles stuff. Graphic Converter 11 surprisingly has now added Apple II single and double high res import. So that's neat. It kind of came out of nowhere. So version 11 of the software can now open and convert Apple II software, or Apple II graphics on your modern Mac. So that was neat.
Yep, that's pretty wild. And a graphic converter itself, I actually have not kept that up and I haven't used it, but that was the thing.
Yep.
For a really long time.
Oh yeah.
For me, it still is. It's still every once in a while because I do a lot of graphic stuff, and every once in a while, somebody will give me something, or I've gotten an old image from a backup, or I don't even know what this is. Who knows? And you can kind of drag anything onto graphic converter, and it'll figure it out. It's really, really good. Anyway, it does Apple II stuff, and I just was kind of surprised to see that in the notes. I'm like, oh, neat. Okay, so Apple II single and double high res files can now be imported on a Mac using Graphic Converter 11.
I wonder what the sort of sparking event was for that. Like, it did somebody. I guess somebody must.
I think
have
he's
said,
running out of file formats. I think it's more just like what's left. Okay, let's start doing other computers with things. Who knows?
Yeah.
So because it's been around for so long.
Interesting.
Yeah. Earl, you have Atari news.
Yeah, this is fresh off the press. Actually, I like to look at Atari Age forums every now and then to see what's going on in the Atari 8-bit world. And this was just freshly posted from Rossum on the Atari Age forums, something called ATR Image Explorer. And it's a browser-based disassembler for various Atari related files, like basic files, XEX, which is like it's a Atari executable. I think there may be metadata in the XEX files. I'm not exactly sure what all they contain, but they're Atari runnable files, ATR files, which are the disk images, and some other files. So this is just an HTML. It can run locally in your browser like Chrome. It has an area that you can drag these files onto, and then it will show you the contents of the files. Like if you drag a disk image file onto it, it'll show you what's in the disk image, and then you can click on files within the disk image, and it will drill down further and show you what some of those contents are. And it can take executables and do like a real-time disassembly of them. It can show you text files. It was just really cool. I mean, I love this concept of these things that the browser and JavaScript and all that have become so powerful that you can run a little app just in your browser, and it does useful stuff like this. And I also like the fact that I don't have to download some sort of executable per se and install it on Windows or install it on Mac or whatever. It just runs in the browser, which will also make it inherently cross-platform. So I thought it was cool. And people are already commenting in this particular thread on Atari Age with ideas. And the person who posted it solicited this and said, hey, here's what I got so far. If you've got some ideas on ways to make it better, let me know. And some people are already jumping in with some really good ideas. Like one person suggested to add in some of the special opcodes for the 6502C. And there were other good suggestions on there too. So anyway, fun stuff, and just kind of a reminder in general that if you're into Atari 8-bits and some other Atari stuff too, Atari Age forums is always a fun place to hang out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Atari Age actually has,
Agreed.
They have a lot of stuff even beyond Atari too. So,
very much.
Yeah, it's a really, really
Yes.
good forum. I noticed that this program, the Image Explorer, was updated 2 hours ago as we record.
Oh, wow. So it came out about 12 or 14 hours ago. So that must mean that the author is already potentially responding to some of the feedback.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very active development. It is. I mean, like, I understand that, like, on the Internet Archive, the emulators are all JavaScript and they're all running in your browser and stuff. But still, this somehow makes it comprehensible that it's like a web page that you drag an image onto and it does something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a .htm file.
Yep.
Very weird.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right. Jack, on to Macintosh.
Yeah, I have something. We talked before about this issue where old Macs can't update their date in the built-in control panels and things beyond 2020, and so there are fixes for that in forms of utility you can run after launch time. But somebody had the idea to say, hey, what if we just go back and actually patch all these old system versions? So I've got the web page open. I've shared the page if you want to bring it up. Something called the long view, which I've not seen before. They have a few different categories of things they're looking at. And this article in this section called the long view is talking about this. Basically, they go through, they talk about why this is an issue, basically, that Apple chose to represent dates back to halfway before the length of their thing. So this will be an issue again in a future date. But for now, what they decided to do is let's go through and fix all the utilities. So basically the idea, so what they say here is, sequence of operating systems, the programs that are used to set the time changed a lot, and they don't all work alike. We will fix them all. So basically,
This we
diving
vow.
through all these old versions of the Finder and how it would set the clock, and just like detailing how they go through and find in the they do a disassembly and find where the code is that makes this happen, and just to sort of fix it everywhere. I don't see links in here to actually download the patched versions, but I presume it exists somewhere.
It's if you're interested enough, you'll type it out.
Yeah. And I haven't read all this, but it's pretty interesting, and I think I just like the gumption that somebody had to go through and say, you know what? I don't like their choice that they made back in the early 80s when they started doing this. Let's just go and fix all their old OSs. I like it.
And then I think they should send copies to the people that worked on the original Mac version. It's like, I fixed your work. I made it better.
Buddy.
Fix that for you.
What's interesting is that it seems like
TFY.
it looks like they're doing a fair amount of this stuff in
using Res Edit
in the system. Yeah.
Opening up and going here
and
just,
stuff.
just patching it.
Yeah. So
Antima.
that's cool. I mean, it's a little aggravating, I would imagine, to try to do the disassembly on the machine and so forth, but it's kind of cool. Yeah, I forget. I think the thing we talked about before was it was sort of like an alternate control. Like the problem was that the control panel wouldn't set the date right, and this was like there was like an alternate application that could do it or something. But this is a more comprehensive fix.
And it's aesthetically nicer to just have it be able to use the built-in things, not have to run a third-party utility.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so they're saying that like the core thing is that so the Mac never had a Y2K problem. It has 138 years and change of time that it can represent, and that will expire in 2040. So 20 years from now, there's still a problem to be solved. But
always a problem you need to solve.
Yeah.
2-digit dates are a problem.
It's
4-digit dates are a problem.
It's after the Unix problem, the Unix time problem.
Yeah, so really it won't be a problem because like nothing will be operational.
That's right.
So any problem past the epoch problem is not a problem.
Anyway, kind of fun article, I think.
Agreed.
Cool. Mm-hmm. All right, I have the next thing. I thought this was kind of neat. This has been passed around a little bit, but there's an article by Moritz and Alexander. It was the article itself is actually from the end of October, so it's not super new, but it is.
Paul, did you want me to share your screen?
Sure, if you'd like to. That's fine. I have it up here. So it's called Vintage Electronics for Trusted Radiation Measurements and Verified Dismantlement of Nuclear Weapons. And so the idea is basically that if you're going to check to make sure that someone is kind of like obeying treaties and that kind of thing with respect to nuclear weapons, you need to be able to test them, but everybody needs to be able to trust it. So you might have some kind of sort of state secret kind of stuff that you don't want information leaking out to the governing bodies about. I mean, like so you're willing to submit to the checks for radiation or whatever, but you're not willing to give them your tech, right? And also the governing body wants to be able to tell, are you cheating somehow? And so the premise of this article is essentially that, modern computers are too complicated, and vintage computers are simple enough that we can trust them. They were not designed to leak information or smuggle anything out. So the proposal is basically, they kind of go through. So let's see. Here's the actual paper. And you can sort of read it, but they go through sort of talking about a bunch of different things that have been used for information barriers. So the idea, the information barrier being a thing that would sort of prevent you from stealing information from the people you're monitoring or whatever. And they sort of go through. There are ones that are based on 386, 486, at mega chip and FPGAs and things. And so they've designed one they're calling the IBX2. I forget what it stands for, but it's here somewhere. The 2, though, I have to, even though it is the second in a series that's labeled IBX, I have to feel like the 2 might actually relate to the thing that they chose, because what they did was they chose to build it with an Apple IIe. So the 6502 is the machine that is going to do these measurements. It's the point is, and I don't know if I can make this big enough to see, but there's a very funny little photo of an Apple IIe setup.
Yeah. That photo made all the rounds. Yeah, it's hilarious. The 2E with a warhead.
Warhead.
Yeah. But I mean, essentially, it's got enough computing power to do the sampling, and it is simple enough. And it was not designed for this. So it's simple enough that everybody can trust it, that it doesn't have some sort of like secret backdoor or something like that. So this is actually a way in which vintage tech can be really used for modern purposes as vintage tech, which is kind of neat. So it's specifically the sort of powerlessness of it.
Right.
It's
all these backhanded compliments for the Apple II.
right. Yeah.
Luckily, it's so underpowered and so useless, we can trust it for this job.
I kind of look at it from the other perspective, and I think one of the things that draws a lot of us to the hobby is the simplicity of the systems means that you can wrap your brain around the whole thing.
Good point.
If you're wanting to make sure that somebody's not smuggling your state secrets out of your country, and you want to be able to examine a system in total, then you need a simpler system. So,
I mean, your Apple II smuggling your secrets.
Yeah, exactly. But so then they did some tests, with, I don't know what the Mirian Osprey is, but I guess this is a trusted testing platform against the IBX2, and they got basically the same kind of curve, so the measurements seem like they would work. So anyway, I thought it's an interesting idea. Kind of fits in a little bit with all the stuff that we've been talking about in the host topic as well. So that's it.
Cool.
Now, Carrington, you have the next thing.
We're going back to bubbles, but it's new bubbles. I have shared my screen so you can take a look. It's a video. Bubbles Whiting at the Center for Computing History has a 15-minute video that everybody should run to watch. It's amazing. All her videos are great, but this is a video of her telling you how to use punch cards, using a punch card machine, going through it. So she not only uses the punch card, she talks about the details and talks about like specific memories of things. It's like a treasure trove of info and interesting things. It is like the best 15 minutes I've seen on YouTube in forever. It is so good. She's a delight. The tech is amazing. Even just looking in the background when she's doing stuff, you see all cool things. It's incredible. But just to see somebody who used punch cards back in the day using punch cards now and talking about it it's great. It's like so fascinating. I could not look away for a second. I wish it was 3 hours, and it's 15 minutes of pure joy. Have any of you guys watched this thing?
No.
Yeah.
not yet. But I will be.
Yeah, you should. Totally.
Yeah,
should.
it is really cool. And she loved her Hollerith machine.
Right? Like, it's
It
like
is so funny.
the joy comes through. She's great. Oh my gosh. I just want to watch a TV show of her. She's so good. Anyway, strongly recommended. It's amazing. I saw this video. I was like, what?
Is she at are they doing this at a computer museum? Looking at the
Center for Computing. Yeah, Center for
Okay.
Computing History is where she
Okay.
is, and so that's my second mention of somebody named Bubbles. It's all Bubbles all the time. I got a theme. So strongly recommend. We'll have a link in the show notes. It's 15 minutes, and it's great. Very quickly, I've got another video as well. A little less, not less interesting, just very different. So I'll share the screen on that one. It's somebody's got unbuilt. I think it's 11 different unbuilt kit computers from the 1970s, and goes through, and you can see the contents of the kits. Kind of opens them up, doesn't put anything together, but shows you what was in these unbuilt kits, and it's awesome. You get to see how they were packaged, what came with them. Most of them I've never heard of, although there's an Altair among them, so there's some more famous ones, but a lot that I've never even heard of before. And it's really, really good. In a lot of cases, like here, he's holding up magazine, because in addition to having the kit, he'll go to a magazine and show you an ad for that kit. So he said, like, this was the ad, here's what it sold for, here's the packaging it came in, here are all the parts and how they were bagged up. It's fascinating. So if you're interested in kit computers from the 70s, this is total joy. So another video I would strongly recommend. It's about half an hour long and very, very good. That's it. Two videos that are worth watching.
Excellent. Cool. And then for some reason I have an extra thing. So
excellent. Go Paul. More Paul. All Paul all the time.
We can. You could put that share the screen if you wanted. But so this is really a fairly short thing. But you may recall that there was a time when people made a Pong on a chip, and so then suddenly you could make very simple Pong games.
Yes.
Sylvain, I guess this is Sylvain Lefebvre, has made Doom on a chip. so there's a there's a write-up on Engadget about this chip plays Doom and nothing else. And
which is funny because that's one of the things is everybody is like, can it run Doom? Can you run Doom? Doom on everything. Doom on every little thing that has any form of display. Somebody writes Doom for it.
So there you go. So if you wanted to get a Doom on a chip, then you that is now possible. So
I do want to have Doom on a chip.
All right. I guess that's it for the items of interest and news. There is an upcoming show roundup. I think
everything is postponed.
So I think I'll probably skip to that. To our vintage commercial. So now a word from our sponsor. What is it? So 1 hour and 45 minutes in.
Excellent. Making it a short one.
Yeah. Okay. And we're back. So in keeping with the commercial you just heard, the host retro computing gift idea, this was stuck in our list of possible ideas, and I thought this was kind of interesting, actually. This is an Upcart Plus for the Commodore 64. I'll put that on a shareable screen. But so what this is, it's a thing that you can buy from CoreI64.com. It is specific to the Commodore 64. So it is, that's one sort of maybe ding against it in terms of retro computing gift idea things, but it's kind of a neat idea, and maybe such things can come to exist or do for other computers. But basically, it's a little right angle converter for cartridges in the Commodore 64 and 128, which would normally go in the back and then stick out. So what this does is make them stick up instead, so that it's sort of easier to, it's easier to fit the thing on your desk, I think, is mainly the idea. But I would imagine it's also kind of easier to put them in and out as well. And so any cartridge computer, I could imagine, could conceivably use something like this.
It just seems more logical to
Right.
have the cartridges go in vertically like the old Atari 800 and 2600 and things like that. The only thing I'd worried about with something like this, or wonder about, I guess I would say, is when you pull the cartridge out, are you torquing the edge connector on the computer? You're probably going to want to put your hand on this.
Press down.
Press down as you pull the cartridge out so you don't break the circuit card. But otherwise, this is really cool.
Maybe it has a
seems
lead
like the case
bar
has
at the
little
bottom.
sort of ears off the side for that purpose, so you can
Yes, that
push your thumb
I
down
see
onto
that
that
now.
while you're lifting the cartridge out. So
And they look pretty well made. I mean, it's kind of a neat idea. And I guess if the Atari or the Atari cartridges are vertical, so maybe you could get something that would make them horizontal.
Right.
So two of the Atari systems had cartridge ports on the back side like this. The 130XE and 65XE had that.
Okay.
And it is kind of annoying. Like it's much better to have it vertically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and I
The
think,
TI has a nice front-loading cartridge, which I always thought was.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, so with the stated purpose for this thing is that the sort of desks are shallower now. So if you're going to put a cartridge in the back of your Commodore, it's going to bump up against all the wires of the wall or something like this. So
Actually, speaking of the TI, what they need to do is create a up angle so that when you have 7 feet of peripherals coming out the side of your TI 994A, you can actually have them stacked vertically going up towards the ceiling. And,
that would be very nice.
yeah, that would be, because desks are definitely not as wide as they used to be. At
Right.
TI, people required
But ceilings are just as high, so that's where the room is.
Yes.
Maybe you could make them on an arc so they go in a big circle around your TI 99.
There you go. Yeah, you'd need some shims like in between each one.
Mhm.
That would work.
So all kinds
love
of product ideas we have here.
Excellent.
But you can start with the Upcart Plus. It's been tested on some sort of known flaky cartridges that are like not flaky, but known low tolerance cartridges. So I guess Turbo Chameleon version 1, I guess, for example, I'm not sure what makes it touchy, but it might well be, testing in something like the cartridge expanders or whatever, where you can select from 4 different cartridges. I assume these are the ones that don't work so well in those.
It seems like a physical thing, right? Like maybe some cartridges had questionable construction, or the edge connectors were just a little finicky to begin with. And then you pop them in an expander or something like that, and they would tend not to work as well. I can't think of anything electrically that would, unless you were like really close tolerances on signal levels or something like that, it wouldn't make sense. Right?
I don't know if this is the case for. It must be the case for Commodore cartridges that sometimes they'll have something other than just a ROM, right? I mean, like sometimes they'll have some actual processing inside.
Yeah, I think there's a 65816 20 megahertz accelerator called Super CPU. If I'm not mistaken, it plugs into the cartridge port, but maybe it's the user port.
That goes in the cartridge port, I think. Okay. They're unobtainium, so I've never even seen one in person.
Right.
But,
right.
I think you're right. It goes in the cartridge port.
I could see that being a little testy.
But there's a CPM card too, like a Z80.
That's right
as well. Which presumably is something more than just a ROM.
No, it's got a Z80 in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a cool idea. It's kind of a weird gift idea, I suppose, but whatever. There you have it. They can't all be good.
Can all be winners.
Okay. So when you're done with that, we can turn to eBay to continue spending money. And Blake, you have the first of our eBay auctions.
Okay, I've got 2 I'm going to talk about. The first one, let me get my screen sharing in place for the stream watchers. Let's see. Okay, I'm all set if I want to switch it. It is, so it's a ultra rare vintage Mindset computer system that boots. And in all caps, ultra rare, which is certainly warranted here. The Mindset computer was released in 1984 or so. It's an 80186 based. It's a graphics computer. It's technically a PC-ish clone. It runs MS-DOS or so perhaps, I think it's MS-DOS, but it's not very compatible. It's like a sort of like a Tandy 2000, which also is a 80186 in that it's not you can't really call it a full clone, but it does have quite the graphics capabilities for the time. It's similar to an Atari 520 ST as far as its graphics capabilities. It has 512 color palette, 320 by 216 colors, which is pretty meager for today, but that was dramatic. There was a world-class paint program for it called Lumina, and it actually has a position in the Museum of Modern Art as far as its industrial design. For those watching the stream, the base unit is just there's a keyboard and a body that has 2 cartridge ports on the front. Another, I guess, like the PC Junior, a DOS machine with cartridge ports, and you can there's an expansion that was quite necessary that's set above it with 2 disk drives. At any rate, it's very much the unobtainium thing.
I was gonna say like $2,000. Well, it sounds like a lot of money for a buy it now. These are crazy rare. I'm surprised this isn't a lot more money than that. Like I've never even seen one of these things. They sold for like a year or something.
Yeah, there's whenever you hear of someone that finds it, there are not many. I think someone was walking through one of these computer warehouse, piles and piles of computers to be recycled, and he caught a glimpse of the corner of a machine and wrote someone in that town and got them to drive over and see if they could recover. I mean, he went to great lengths to get the hardware. And anyway, as you can see, here's the pictures I'm showing for the stream, or there's an interface, the main unit and the secondary unit, the label. But yeah, I've never seen one. There's a Mindset joystick that's part of this, and I've never even seen a picture of that.
Me neither. This really is one of the rare auctions where I think this person would have been much better off doing a starting bid and letting it go for something, because I think someone's going to snatch this up for $2,000 and be surprised at how cheap they got it.
$2,000 is certainly a good price for this. I mean, even if someone you could turn around and sell it for a lot more, but
I
as
think
an
so too.
item to keep, it's quite a.
And the fact that it's working, like shown to be working, stuff like that, this is the biggest bargain I think we've seen on the show in a while. Like, I mean, I don't want one, but this is like the alternative universe Amiga, essentially. Like, you just don't see these things.
Yeah, definitely. It's and there was some crossover. The engineers on this, I think, actually migrated to Atari to help with the 520 ST. I've written about it a few times in the past. I don't recall the details, but yeah, it's definitely a keeper. So some lucky collector will get this one. But and as I said earlier,
I think nobody has. I think the only reason it's on eBay and hasn't sold is who the heck would have this on a watch list. So it's like, I didn't think that would come up. It's funny.
It doesn't look yellow. It doesn't look particularly yellowed either. I mean, it looks like it's in really good physical condition. And as I mentioned earlier, Thomas, I believe is his first name, Cherryhome, made a native Plato client for this specific machine that utilizes its graphics capabilities, which I don't even know what to say about that. But so this is about one of the better deals I've seen. It looks like, yes, it's going for right now $1,999, $100 shipping from outside the U.S. I guess it's coming from Nova Scotia. So yeah, maybe you could walk over there, Carrington.
Yeah, I'll just walk over the coast and get right on that.
Yeah,
this is that same seller we've seen a number of things from Sci-Fi Man.
Yeah,
Sci-Fi Man.
So
normally Sci-Fi Man kind of doesn't underprice things, so I'm surprised. Yeah, anyway, I would have guessed that this would go high, and I usually think things are not worth what other people think they're worth. So I'm still surprised.
Well, especially since every time I search eBay for the show, or I do it occasionally in between, I always look for the highest price to see what the funniest is. And I think right now there's like a NVIDIA GeForce 2 graphics card for $6,000. So given that that's out there, I mean, this makes this even better a buy. But anyway, so that's a very nice unit.
Yep.
And the only other piece that I want to get through here is it's an Exatron stringy floppy disk drive wafer, lot of 40. And I think we've talked about the Exatron drives. I know for a while, a cheaper, medium between floppy disks and cassette tapes was the stringy floppy, which is a fancy perpetually looping cassette tape that can access automatically. It's linear access, but also sort of random. Anyway, so here's a lot of 40. It doesn't really say if it says pulled from a working environment, but some have scuffs. I guess they're not necessarily new, but I don't recall ever having seen any significant amount of these offered up. And actually, it would be interesting to see what the data on these things is. I wonder. But I know there are drives for, I think there's an Exatron for the TRS-80 line, and I think there were a few British computers that used it. Do you recall any other specific uses of this? Anyone? The drives? No.
I think this is the thing that made me get a Spectrum, right? I think that was what, because I got a drive, and then I had to get the computer that it would plug into.
Okay, yeah. And the some of the Spectrums, I know, like the QL had a wafer drive, but I don't believe that was the Exatron. I think that's proprietary. But I think I believe there was one of these for the Spectrum. But anyway, so if you need some wafers for your wafer tape drive. Yeah, I think the Compact Computer 40 TI's hex bus thing had a wafer tape drive that might have used these. Anyway, $299, a lot of 40 from Seattle, Washington, and I would need to do some calculation apparently to find out how much the shipping is. But I'm not going to order them, so I'm not going to do that. But I just wanted to pass that on, and that's all I've got from eBay today.
I think that's interesting. I don't feel like I've seen the media before. I mean, like, this is very clearly, like, you can see what's happening with the tape in this. I thought they were opaque.
Yeah, I just zoomed in. I was sitting here idle. I just zoomed in. If you could share my screen one more time, I should have zoomed in earlier. Yeah, you can sort of see. Yes, the I've never seen clear one, so you can see the tape comes in, and you can, in the middle of the image on the stream right now, you can see how the tape flips from, being vertical to horizontal, and then it spools back in to the center reel. Interesting tech. It seems like this. The wafers to me seem like it would have some wear to it. It seems like the tape's going through these gyrations. It would make me a little nervous to. This doesn't seem like a real backup solution, so to speak. But again, I think they were. But this is back when floppy disks were prohibitively expensive, and everyone was using cassette tapes, and this was the medium. So it fit a niche, I guess. That was.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think these were the thing that were, it was sort of halfway between.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be using these instead of floppies. Everybody would rather have a floppy disk drive, but these were a lot better than lining up the tape counter and hitting play on your on your Sony tape player or whatever.
I just can't believe these things.
How much data was stored per
I see a couple of the tapes said had on the label said, "Whoops, sorry, you can stop my sharing." I just shifted off. I was going to Google. I think some of the one of them said 16K, and I'm not sure if that is the the absolute limit. I was taking a quick look here.
Although that may have been talking about the how much memory the computer had to have in order to run the program that was on it.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm actually now looking. It's just Wikipedia, but it just quickly it says Radio Shack. They're mentioning their drives. Radio Shack actually might have sold a drive. At least several people made it for the Radio Shack Model 1, VIC 20, Commodore 64, TI CC40. Yep, I guess that was the one that the TI 99-8 and the CC40 were going to use, but they don't. It says the wafers were available with lengths ranging from 5 to 75 feet. Capacities are 4K for 5 feet, 16K for 20 feet, 48K for 50 feet, and 64K for 75 feet. One complete cycle through the 20-foot loop took 55 seconds.
Yeah.
You read some Wikipedia to you.
It's funny, though. You look at these and you just wonder, was this a good idea?
No, it was not.
Because it just seems like it seems so easy for it to fail.
Right.
I feel like I can see it losing data just looking at it. You're like, the kink. There's a bit missing.
Right, and then but it's going at high velocity. So as soon as that kink hits a dead spot, then suddenly the whole thing is unspooled.
It's just like
yeah.
That'd be fun, I guess. And suddenly it shoots across the room.
Yeah, or it locks up the little thing, and then the engine starts smoking. And
excellent.
Yeah,
something catches on fire and then falls off the table and sets the curtain on fire.
It's a testament to how bad it was using standard cassette decks for data storage, I guess, to endure that. But anyway, that's what I got.
All right. Carrington, you have the next ones.
Okay, I'm up. Few links, but really just 3 choices. I'm sharing my screen here. First one is a T-shirt. It's a $90 T-shirt. It is the AOL Running Man. So if you want an AOL shirt, super early on, it's still sealed. And what I liked about it was the way it came packaged, kind of sealed and shrink wrapped into the shape of that little AOL Running Dude. It's from the collection of somebody who was a very early AOL employee. Because it was like a gift to them, there's no label on it that you can see without opening up. So the person doesn't know what size it is, but he says it was a relatively bigger guy. So it's probably large or extra large. But who knows? You buys your auction, you takes your chances. But if you're a collector of obscure AOL memorabilia and you want to branch out from floppies and CDs, then there's an option to buy a sealed Running Man shirt.
Yeah, that would be so rough, though, to buy this and open it. I mean, because you
can't open it. You just have to have it, I think, and use it as a pillow or something.
Yeah, because you would never get it back in that plastic.
Never. It is hardcore shrink wrapped into this weird shape. So that was the first one. It caught my eye because like it's a weird shape for a t-shirt to come in, but it's also $90. So you got to be a real AOL fan for that. Second choice is a person has a number of stickers, and these kind of caught my eye because I like how creative they are. One of them is my other computer is an Apple II, and they have a Commodore 64 version of this. So you can say my other computer is a Commodore 64. There's my other tablet is a Newton. It's got a bunch of WAS inside stickers. So instead of Intel inside, WAS inside. So I like the creativity of these. So this Retro Geek Collection person, and I really dig my other computer is an Apple II. I would put that on a laptop, and they're not super pricey. $240 in euros, so that's like about $250 US or something. So not bad for a sticker. You get just one of them, but how many stickers do you really need? Paul, how many stickers do you need?
You put them on all of your Commodores, right?
But on your Commodore, you put them on, say, like the Apple II, and on the Apple II, you put my other one's a Commodore, and it's all legitimate. I just like the stickers. They're a little more creative than the normal ones you see. So if you sticker up your computers, this is probably a person who's got a bunch that you'd want. I like the tablet one in particular. My other tablet's a Newton. I could put that on. I could see me putting that on my iPad. Yeah. So I dug it. And last choice is something I don't recommend, but something I had. So it's one of those auctions that just is immediately evocative of a thing I had and disliked. It was my very first printer ever. And it turns out that was the Radio Shack CGP 115. I didn't know what it was called. I just knew it was a tiny little thing. It takes these 4 little tiny color pens. So you get a little mini blue pen and red pen and green pen and presumably black, I guess, was the other color. And it's a plotter, but the paper that comes out of it is the size of a cash register tape. It is the most useless printer you can imagine. But this was my first printer. So, my gosh. And weirdly, I'll have a link in the auction as well. I've got this, and then it says the only thing missing from it, because this is a boxed, beautifully working copy of this terrible printer, but it says it's missing one of the reels of paper. But another person is currently selling a collection of 4 rolls of paper for this printer. So it's time for Paul to buy this printer, is what I'm saying. Everything has come together. It's time for Paul to purchase a printer.
Nice. Yeah.
It's a terrible printer.
I had the Atari version of this same thing. I think the Atari one was called the 1020 plotter. Also the 4-pen thing.
Was it terrible?
Paper. Yeah, it was terrible, but it was also wonderful. It was great. It was
my first printer. Like, it's the first thing I ever had that could print. So I have a soft spot because of that.
It was cheap compared to a real printer.
I think that's why it was my first printer.
You could send it commands from BASIC to draw lines and stuff like that. You could it had sort of a weird kind of protocol you could tell it to do stuff.
But you can see from the picture on the box, it shows this graph, and it's like, oh, look at this profits, and it shows the 3 colors. We're printing it out, and it's got a red bar and a green bar and a blue bar, and with black because those are the 3 colors. You can't mix them. You got 3 colors it can draw in. But what you can't tell from really looking at this is like the span of your hand is much wider than the printer. Like these things are, or at least wider than the paper. They're hilariously useless and slow as the little pen draws on it. But I printed many a Coco listing from this thing. So,
oh yeah.
See,
those are my choices.
For plotters, it would be kind of useful to have like a cursive font. Sure. Like the pen just stays down.
I don't think I ever printed a graph. I think I just printed small listings. I bet you I never even ran out of ink on the first pens. Like, I was happy to have it because it was a printer. I never had a printer, but this was a gift, and I learned later to think, well, that's a useless printer when I got later printers. So those are my choices.
Excellent.
My other printer is more capable. We'll make a sticker that you put on this one. My other printer is full size.
My other printer is a 4-pen plotter.
Yes.
There you
go. Okay, Earl, you have some deck stuff.
I do. Would somebody be willing to share them?
Let's see. Yes, I can do that. 1 second.
Let me know when.
Yep, it's ready.
Okay. So the first one that I have here, I found particularly interesting because, first off, it's inexpensive. Secondly, it looks like it is an artifact from back in the day. It's a deck paper tape, and I think it has a PDP-8 program on it. And the cool part about that is that it would fill a niche in my collection because I have a variety of other kinds of like personal storage, like a 8-inch floppy, 5 1/4 inch, a couple of reel-to-reel tape, like the 6250 tape reels, but I don't have any paper tape. I have punch cards and that kind of thing. So this seemed like an inexpensive artifact. Now, I was curious, though, thinking, well, I wouldn't want to buy it and take it from somebody who is actually going to use it. But, I mean, what are the chances that somebody with a PDP-8 is going to want to take this folded paper tape? This was the one thing that they needed to make their PDP-8 work, and I took it from just to stick it away in a drawer somewhere. But I thought it was really cool. It has the deck logo on it. It was interesting, like, hey, kids, this is what we did when we walked 5 miles uphill in the snow. We had paper tape. And so anyway, I thought it was a cool auction. It looked like it was in good shape, too. And for $10, how could you go wrong?
Yeah, that's interesting. So the I assume when you feed this in, it looks to me, I don't actually know how paper tapes work, but it looks like there's a kind of like a track that that it feeds on, but you must have to put the label past that because the label has no holes in it. So you must.
Yeah, I actually don't know either. And I mean, I used these back in the day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, but I don't know how they work.
I wonder how many of these that were well used actually have holes punched all the way through the label as the machine ran through it. People are like, screw it. I don't got to keep this nice.
That's true. Although you would want to keep that header information so that you would know what this paper tape was
Yeah, because
for.
it does look like the name for the program lines up pretty nicely with that guy tried to punch right through it. Too bad. Could have been anything.
Have you seen my debug program? No.
Maybe. Is it called hole?
G? So that was one. And then could you bring up the other? So the other, I just looked at and I thought, why is this a thing? So this is an eBay auction for a Commodore shot glass. I couldn't tell based on the auction whether this was something that was new, like newly created, or if this was a shot glass from back in the day. It looks like it's in really good shape. It's got the Commodore chicken head logo, gold rim on the top, shot glass size. And unless somebody's bought them, at the time that I was looking, there were 4 available. It was $10 with, cheap shipping or something like that, or maybe free. So I was looking at this and I was thinking, okay, the description said something on the order of, a nice addition to any collection. And I thought, I'm a Commodore guy and I just don't think I need this. I was trying to imagine the scenario in which I would break this out. It's like you take your finest stuff off the top shelf and you go, what am I going to drink this with? Wait, I know. It's my Commodore shot glass. What do you guys think of this? I mean, irrespective of the whole Commodore thing.
Yeah.
The last time that I went to the retro gathering here in Sweden, there was a seller who was selling small glasses that they had somehow they must have had some equipment. They have some etching equipment, and they had etched in. So I actually bought 2 shot glasses and 2 small whiskey tumblers with Atari logos on them, but they had all kinds of logos on them. And but you're right, I have never used them.
Or were they from back in the day?
These were new. These were definitely new.
See, I'm thinking maybe this is new too. Anyway,
I think this is new because the seller is like a printer.
Oh, good catch.
Yep.
Because Action Quick Print. And also the seller has a Next computer shot glass logo one as well. So I stuck that in the link. So I think it's just like a retro computer fan who has a printer. Says, let me... And is a drinker. Says, like, I can combine my hobbies.
He has a 3-color plotter.
Yeah.
Put those pens to good use.
So you haven't busted those out, Jack? Like if you're having a guest over, you thought, what are we going to suck down some of this awesome whiskey with?
Well, I think I bought them last September or something. I feel like half of that time we've been in quarantine. I haven't had a lot of guests.
Oh,
Yeah, but you think there would have been a lot of drinking though
Yeah, you don't need guests to do a little drinking.
to drink in
true.
quarantine. Are you kidding me? Like,
I'm
I thought
actually
maybe-
going to grab these things. I'm going to take my headphones off and show you guys.
cool.
I thought maybe it was an artifact from the last days of Commodore. Maybe it belonged to Irving Gould, and when he was deciding how much money to inject into Commodore before they went bankrupt, he'd take a shot or two.
yeah. Or was he and Trammell on the pet jet? You know, they're cruising along.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. But
All right, so here's what
I
I'm talking
guess-
about.
sadly, it's a printer.
Oh,
So
wait.
this is-
Let me stop the.
These things that I bought are the shot glasses are this kind of smaller variety.
I
hang
like
on, Jack. Hang on, just one sec. I want to make you big.
Big Jack
And Big and Jack.
and Big
So
and him.
they're-
Those are
these-
nice
these
looking,
are-
actually.
Oh, that's a double.
Narrow and tall, and then I
Yeah.
got these little whiskey tumblers also.
So
And
all
a bunch
etched
of
in.
different ones.
That's
they
classy.
Had like, yeah, they're pretty nice. And
I like it.
I think the glasses themselves, the big one is marked IKEA on the bottom, so they're
What a sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
I think they just
so I
took
guess
glasses and etched them.
yeah. They just bought glasses from wherever and
Yeah.
etched them. And they
Etching's
had a
really
ton of
easy if
different
you
ones.
guys haven't done it, because there's etching stuff. You basically have a template, you put it on, you rub on the etching cream, you wait a bit, you rinse it off, you've etched glass. It's really simple.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
so you can actually etch into most glass really easily.
Hey, where'd Blake go? There he is.
And these were
He's off to
these
use
were-
etching.
quite inexpensive. I think they cost like $3 and $6 or something like that.
I was just I showing
Blake
you
has
my
a Goonies
lovely
mug.
Goonies, my Goonies mug from the 80s. I can't find any of my shot glasses, but
It's a
probably
shot
rolling-
glass.
they're probably rolling around the
So a
floor.
full 8-ounce Goonies tumbler becomes your quarantine
Just
shot
like,
glass.
you know, this is like a triple shot, I guess. Maybe I don't know. Maybe something like that. But anyway,
Very nice.
Nice. Okay, Paul, I think we're on to you. What have you got for us to purchase? What do you got that
Okay,
can compare to a Goonies tumbler?
I'm not sure that I can
Nothing.
beat that, but let's see.
Nothing can beat that.
Well, what do I want to talk about? I have many options. I think I will. Okay, I'll run through some of them. I'll skip some of them. Some of them were quick. But okay, so the first one is it is Apple II ROM lot. Basically, it's just miscellaneous things, miscellaneous stuff. And I just thought it was mildly interesting. Just because there are things I could point out about the various things, but it is currently it's got 5-6 days left. Basically, it is currently at a bid of $51, and it's kind of miscellaneous collector type stuff. So it has a bunch of ROMs, which if you look at them, they're in fact I'm pretty sure this is correct, the integer basic ROMs that came in the original Apple II. And there's like a sort of portion of the address space that they sort of are responsible for, from D000 to FFFF. And in the newer Apple II Pluses, there's basically 6 spots for these, and in the newer Apple II Pluses, they're all filled up. AppleSoft Basic takes up 2, but integer basic only took up 1, I think. And so in the oldest Apple IIs, you had only 5 of them full, and then there was like an extra space which you could put. There's like a utility one you could put in there. But the person who was sort of labeling these when they put them in the foam didn't fully understand. They essentially sort of forgot what they were doing, I guess, and so it marked F8, F0, E8, E0, D8, D0. But then there were only 5.
I was
So
going to
they
say,
crossed
but
out the
there's
D8.
these crossed out the D8. Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool. But anyway, so these are relatively, these are not super hard to get, but they're sort of hard to get because the integer basic Apple IIs didn't last that long. So anyway, that's what that is. Then there's a bunch of sort of miscellaneous other chips. I didn't actually look those up. Although some of them, it could be that some of these are actually these ones that say Apple 1978 might be the 13 sector disk controller proms, those are also a little bit hard to find. This other board that has a couple of chips on it is it's some kind of character generator switch, so it might be a lowercase thing. And there's I guess it's a D9, DB9, D something 9 connector, which I think is something that you actually solder onto your encoder board for your keyboard. So, these are a bunch of sort of like almost like repair parts. But it's kind of interesting. Like I recognize all of them, and I like see the extent to which they're collectible, even though this is just like the seller doesn't know what this is. It's a bunch of miscellaneous chips. D0 EO, Duo EO E8 Faux F8. It says, but anyway, so that was it. Same seller. The same seller has a bunch of old Apple II stuff, I guess. This one I thought was kind of interesting, maybe more interesting than that other one. It is a Prometheus Products Apple Assurance diagnostic disk controller for your Apple II. And what it is, so this box also contains a regular disk controller, but the Prometheus one is the one that's in the bag here. And Prometheus is a fairly big company, fairly big maker of cards. What this turned out to be, I'd never heard of this before.
What is Apple Assurance?
It's basically a power-on self-test for your Apple II. So it'll check some of your ROMs, it'll test your RAM if you want, and you stick it in place of your disk controller card. So anytime you would have booted from your disk controller card, it will instead put up a diagnostic menu for a second.
So it checks everything about your computer except the disk drives.
I don't know exactly what let's see. So,
is it a disk controller card itself?
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
So Apple Assurance, there is. I found a presentation.
It seems to come with a disk
Buggy.
controller card.
And I think I forget when the presentation was. It says 1996. Stephen Buggy presented this at Kansas Fest, but and he actually gave a little, not a picture, but a representation of what the startup screen is. So when you boot the disk, it brings up a thing, and I guess that's not what this is. I don't know. I thought that was there. Anyway, there's a couple of things you can check with it, and it'll tell you the check of some of the RAM of the ROM, and then you can sort of see if that matches what you think it should be. So basically, my impression of this was that like it's sort of a good idea to have a power on self test.
To have a post on
the sort.
Yeah,
but it's not actually that. It's a boot self test. And it doesn't do very much.
Yeah, because it's after boot, and after you go in, then it says, okay, now let me see. Yeah, your ROM is your ROM.
Yeah, well, it's after power on, but pre-boot, and it happens every time you boot. And if you want to skip past it, then
of course, it's going to be before, right?
Yeah, but so I liked this quote from Stephen Buggy's presentation. It says, let's see, there are a few diagnostic tests, but they're done frequently. So. Little is done, but what is done is frequently seen. So, and that I think was just basically
I don't do much, but I do it all the time.
The complaint about this is that let's see, what was it? Apple Assurance. Yeah, it essentially. There are a couple different reviews of it, but everybody kind of panned it. It's sort of like it does too little, too often, too clunkily.
It was $70.
Yeah,
it looks like.
Yeah. Jameco Electronics sold it.
Huh,
But,
I remember Jameco.
Okay. So it's a unusual card because it's unpleasant to use. But there you go. Anyway, I'd never seen it before. It's not going for very much. Add to watch list. Okay. What else? This is also just sort of like a simple thing. Someone is selling. Is it the same person? Might be. No, yeah, it's the same person. I guess I liked this person's stuff. This is a bunch of old personal software Visi stuff. So VisiDex, VisiFile, VisiCalc, and the CCA data management system.
I loved their padded cover binders.
Yeah,
those are so cool. I remember those from back in the day.
Nothing says like real business software to me, like a padded binder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
these are nice. And they're old too. I mean, so this is like the first run of these things. So these are pretty collectible, actually. I think if I can zoom in on, I have them all already, right? But where's the VisiCalc? I think it's this one. No, I was just looking at it, but you can see the date here. On the VisiCalc disk is December 5th, 1979. So that's really old.
Mm-hmm.
I forget when it came out, but it's like August 1979 or something. I mean,
I was going to say it's 79 anyway. So, and I don't think early 79. So yeah, so that is a really early version of this.
Yeah.
As someone who leapt right on it and said, I envision good things for this.
Yeah, and it's starting at a $50 starting bid, so it's not bad. I'm seeing a bunch of things here which I tried harder than that to collect, and now here they are. But
cool.
Do I want to keep talking about these things? I don't know. I'm just paging through tabs now. I only wanted to comment about the Tandy 1000 EX. Is this a common computer? Do people know this computer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It looks really terrible.
So you thought you'd just shame it?
Yeah, basically. Well, when I looked at it, it reminded me of the Pravets, which is this Bulgarian computer. It has that same kind of like, just, I don't know. It's very sort of utilitarian.
Well, it was just a pretty generic IBM clone, I think.
Mm-hmm. Floppy drive on the side.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I actually Craiglisted last holiday a year and a half ago, the 1000 HX and built it up. It's this machine, but with 2 3.5-inch drives on the front.
I see.
Yeah, it's a nice little. It was quick. It was very, very popular. It was a huge Tandy seller.
Interesting.
Yeah, more powerful than the 1000. I think it has 8 megahertz instead of 4.77, 8088 too. So it's a little faster, cheaper.
It's really embracing that typewriter form factor, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's see.
I think they took those the Plus cards or whatever to upgrade them, if I remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
Plus cards. They're electronically identical to ISA, but it actually.
But it was like a pin connector thing.
Physically, yeah. For the HX, I ended up buying some. You can get Plus to ISA adapters, and I mounted some, like a serial card and a CF XT IDE CF IDE controller, 2 ISA cards that are dapped. So you can do that if you. The unobtainium thing though is the Tandy 640K memory expansion. You'll see people buy them, as I did. I bought an EX just to get the 640K memory expansor Plus card because it has the risers that provide the additional 2 Plus things. You have to have that if you want to fully expand. So it's there's a whole situation with these these form factor Tandys. They're well desired.
Interesting. Yeah, I really feel like I have not come across them much at all in my various eBay excursions. But
one of the neat things about them, I don't think all of the 1000s or 2000, like I don't remember which models did this, but at some point they started doing the drive swapping thing. So you've got the A and the B drives, but on boot you can say, no, I want B to be A and A to be B instead, and so you could boot from either one. And so it made it like, I don't know why that was useful, but it was like one of the big selling points is you can have 2 different ways to boot and you can easily swap between them. I don't know why it suddenly became a big deal that A was B and B was A, but it was like one of the differentiating features that they thought was a big deal.
If you're curious, I have a picture of 2 pictures of mine include that shows the inside of the Plus adapter. Do you want to like to see it? If somebody wants, let me share. Okay, if somebody wanted, you put it up. Okay, yeah, this is the HX version has space for 2 front mounted drives. And I think the CPU is the same. I know this was an 8088 too. I think that's the same with the EX. This came right after the EX, and this I think this one has DOS and ROM. It's just nothing but DOS boot. There's no commands, so it's almost pointless. But it has that in ROM, and then you can see here inside of it are some Plus adapter. There's a ribbon cable adapter, and that's the IDE controller. And there's the unobtainium 640K Tandy memory card that has a DMA controller, and then it has 2 risers for the Plus. So here you can have memory. Basically, if you plug this in, you get memory plus 2 more quote unquote ISA plus slots, and then you can expand fully. So that's what that's about. But yeah,
Cool. Okay, let's see. I have two more things that I will mention. So one is it's just a big lot. This is something Ian actually pointed out to me, but entire lot of vintage deck PDP 11 and others books. And so if this is the kind of thing that you find interesting, there's a ton of stuff here. Basically deck stuff. I see there's like a VT100 manual user guide here. There's some marketing things.
There's a lot of books. This would be a heavy shipment.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I don't know, like this is sort of outside my area enough that I just can't imagine finding a place for these things. But I also have this kind of feeling that the deck community has documented a fair amount of these things, but I don't know. I wonder about those, like the marketing materials, and I know with those like, the orange manuals and things, they were updates, right? And so this manual set was not, the Apple repair manuals are like this too. Like having the set does not mean you have them. You have them at a moment in time.
Right.
So I don't know.
One of the books in here, the one toward the bottom there, the gray book at the bottom of that first picture. I don't know if you can zoom in on that or not. There you go.
Not sure which one it is, but
That one. Yeah, the one that you're pointing at there. I'd had a little bit of trouble finding online. I think I finally did find it online, but I actually have that in hard copy, and it had some very useful reference material in there for the PDP-11 stuff that I've got. And so it's possible that there's other books that we're looking at here that aren't online either. It's tough to tell.
yeah. And I mean, you can tell basically that this person is about ready to just be rid of the stuff.
Yep.
So it's let's see, basically not everything is pictured. If you want to know the condition of something, email, but you basically just have to like take it all.
Yeah.
So anyway, if that is something you're interested in, it's not super expensive really for what it is. I mean, like right now it's at a $53 bid, and at least shipping to me from the other side of the continent, it's like under $50. So, okay. And then this is the last thing. I thought it was just sort of interesting, I guess. More Apple II peripherals, but this is an external Apple II keyboard.
You don't see this much.
I believe I've seen this. This looks familiar to me.
Does it?
Yeah, that's a Coleco Atom keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering.
Oh, that's where I recognize that. Okay, cool. I kept thinking I know that side part.
I mean, and if you look at it, it's got like stickers
not as
on
an
some of the
Apple II
keys.
thing. Okay, cool.
So I think it may well be actually a Coleco Atom keyboard.
I was going to say, like, I don't recognize this as an Apple II thing, but the right side of it all seemed really weirdly familiar to me. That's why I think this is an Atom keyboard.
Yeah.
So was this a thing, like at the time somebody took this keyboard? This is a vintage thing. Like this was sold at the time that way.
But is the real thing here that is there an adapter? Is that what we're really talking about? I mean, is it that someone said, "Oh, here's an adapter," and that would be it to use an Atom keyboard? I wonder if that's the thing that was sold.
Yeah, I think that may well be the value add, at least.
Yeah.
There's a photo here that sort of shows it in use. In the sort of like old tech photocopied manual.
Yeah.
And it seems to show that interface card just sort of like sitting on the carpet next to the on the desk just out in the open.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's what is it called? I knew here. Yeah. Okay, so I found some mention of this in. So this is like 1989, 1990 time frame. So Martech Electronics has made available this IBM style keyboard for the Apple II Plus and IIe. And somewhere else, I think it was suggested that this is basically just like a one-person operation. So it's quite possible that there's just, they get an order, they go out and buy an Atom.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, there was probably a pile of Atoms, people, resellers, like some kind of, interesting. And I'm sure it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it was actually the case that Atom Basic was a clone compatible with AppleSoft Basic, interestingly. It's same commands, same everything.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting that part of the pitch for this, reading the little manual comes with it, is that you get the 12 function keys that are programmable, so you can load up and save in them commands for like catalog or PR number 6, whatever, and just execute them with one keystroke. And that this works with a 2 Plus, so you get if you add it to a 2 Plus, you're getting auto repeat and Apple, the Apple keys and caps lock and proper full arrow keys and all that. So I can see it as being a real upgrade for an early Apple.
Yeah.
This is neat.
So weird.
I mean, it's ugly, but it's neat.
Well, it has the color is kind of nice insofar as it looks like certain kinds of corn, right?
The problem is the inconsistency of the corn.
But everything kind of like
different keys were planted at different seasons, apparently. Some are a deep golden and some are not, and that is just messing with my eyes.
Yeah, it's not super expensive either. It's $50. So anyway, okay, neat. So that's it for me. I don't know how long we've been recording, but it's really getting absurd now. So let's move to closing discussions.
Do it.
Sounds good.
So I guess, Blake, you are the first.
Okay, am I? All right, well, I'll mention that I need a haircut, and I'm looking forward to getting one. I think I said that earlier. The other thing, more relevant to the show, is I recently picked up a HP 100LX. It's a clamshell, little handheld clamshell. It's DOS compatible, standard CGA DOS. It runs a 80186 at some speed, I think 7 megahertz or something. You load, you can put a flash card in the side, or it has a serial port that's extremely non-standard, so good luck finding a cable. It has infrared if you happen to have some kind of device that can communicate that way with it. But so I thought I'd play with it. I found it for a reasonable price on eBay, and over the years I've dabbled here and there with handhelds, and I was inspired to play with this one, so we'll see how that goes. But
cool.
That's about it for me.
Cool.
Yep, I'm unfamiliar with that one.
But... No, me neither. Or me too, I guess. Me too is not familiar.
Yeah, this is what happens when we get close to the 3-hour mark.
and as for me, as for news, I don't need a haircut.
All right.
And I don't have a HP clamshell. I am the anti-Blake.
Yep.
It could be.
It's like anti-M, right?
Exactly. Anti-Blake.
Earl, what news from Portland?
Well, I bought an upgrade like I do every few years to the Amiga Forever package. It's kind of an interesting combination of an emulator, some officially licensed ROMs that they'd somehow licensed through the whole, this kind of weird chain of IP that happened with Commodore stuff. But it also has a nice launcher. It bundles with some games and demos and has a Windows installer, so you run it and you can double click on what you want to run and boom, up comes an Amiga and you can do fun stuff with it. And I've always liked it. I like to support them. And they had a really good offer recently for an upgrade for people who were already customers. So I bought it, I ran it, having fun with it. Fun to see some of the old Amiga demos. And I also want to learn a little bit about Amiga programming because I know less than zero about how to program an Amiga. And I think I'd like to know how you do that stuff. And the other thing, I just don't understand this. So my daughter is a marketing major. We were looking over my YouTube channel to see how you could improve it. Sorry, it's basically like, well, anything. Do anything in your But we
Do a thing.
we looked at one of the videos that I put up of an unboxing of Clipper version Summer 87. Clipper was a D-Base compiler, and I loved it back in the day. It was great. It was efficient. It made me lots of money. So I figured, a handful of people will watch it. And that's what happened. When I put it up, I had like 20, 30 views. And I thought, great. So she's looking at the video. She's like, do you know you have 1,600 views on this thing? I'm like,
Why does everybody love Clipper?
there's no way 1,600 people wanted to click on that and watch me take Clipper Summer 87 out of a shrink wrap box. So this is a mystery to me. So people of the internet, tell me, why are you watching this video?
D-Base compiling is making a big comeback in 2020, apparently.
That's what I heard. Yeah, along with COBOL, that's the stuff. So I don't get it, but thank you very much for watching.
Very weird.
Sweet.
Jack, what of interest with you?
I don't have anything except I was all geared up that I was gonna upgrade my Atari 600 XL to a full 64K of RAM this weekend.
You were geared?
I just didn't do it.
Oh.
That's it.
Oh, I see. I was expecting sort of a bigger bang to that story.
I really
No, just kind of let down. I just didn't do it. I was like, I'm gonna do it, and then I didn't do it.
I'm going to do it.
That's my news.
Nice.
Well, if that's what
news.
we're going to talk about here, then
I can talk about stuff I didn't
million
do.
of those.
Yeah, I got tons of stuff I didn't do this weekend.
Yeah, I have a ton of things I didn't do also, but that's the only thing retro computing related that I didn't do.
Okay, fair enough.
That you almost did.
Almost.
Cool. And what about you, Paul? What have you
All
got?
right.
Oh, you got postcards.
I did. Yeah. I mean, we
That's
talked about this a while ago, but I don't know if they're visible.
So they showed up? That's cool.
Yeah. The
I
Royal
didn't pull the
Mail
trigger
sent-
on those. I was seriously tempted.
So, anyway, yeah, I haven't opened them any further. So all I know is the Elite's on the front.
Right.
But, and I don't have anyone to send them to, but whatever. So that was kind of cool. And also the 100, whatever it is, the 100 iconic home computers that defined a digital generation or whatever, that book, that came. It's super thick. Maybe I'll get it in a little bit, but so that arrived. And I also noticed that even CNN had a piece about it. Like before, we had linked to the Guardian that was talking about this new book, but made it onto CNN too, which is on this side of the ocean. So,
Cool.
Cool.
Otherwise, I'm still here in my apartment.
As are we all. Well, we're not all in your apartment.
That's true. That's true. At least
As far as you know, Paul.
So, yeah, that's about it. I don't know. For me, the school year really did end this big beginning of the week. So, like, grades were in, everything was filed. So now I think I am finally getting to that point where everybody else is, where like now there's actually time. Anyway, so we'll see if maybe next time I have something to report. But I will close this out if that is good. Is that good?
That works.
All
Right. So that's it for this show. You can find the show notes for this and all the RCR shows at rcrpodcast.com. You can discuss the show in the forums at vcfed.org/forum/forum.php. You can follow RCR on Twitter at RCRpodcast. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/RCRpodcast, or send feedback to feedback@rcrpodcast.com. We are a member of the Throwback Network at throwbackreviews.com. And please write a review on iTunes. In principle, it might help marketing. I don't know. Earl can fill us in on that. But and until next time.
Retro
compute.
Yeah, okay.
All right. I think with that, we're going to end the broadcast. So
Oh,
for
yeah.
those who have stuck with us on YouTube, thank you,
You
very
are
much.
amazing.
Talk to you all later.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.